Previously on X-Men.
We're not going to recap all three movies, right?
That wasn't my intention, no. I wasn't thinking that. It's been 20 years, the 20th anniversary of the first X-Men movie. If you haven't gotten it in since the year 2000, you either hurry up before you listen to the podcast, or I have to assume you have at least a working knowledge of the basics of the X-Men franchise and the movies. They've made a lot of money. A lot of people saw them. So it's really on you to educate yourself as a listener if you want to participate in this podcast, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Spoilers?
Check.
Mature language?
Check.
Should listeners be advised?
Check.
Everybody, welcome to the Marvel Superheroes Podcast. I'm Luca Machina. With me is
Diabolu Frank
and
Mr. Fixit.
And today we're going to talk about the X-Men Trilogy, the first three X-Men films, because this is the, 20th anniversary of X1?
Very nearly to the day, indeed. Yeah.
Excellent. So we thought, I don't know if there's really any reason to, wait until 2026 to celebrate The Last Stand, but, this is sort of a self-contained, in a way,
we're going to do the
trilogy,
X-Men
so we
trilogy.
should cover them all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought this was Frank's chance to get on his soapbox. I thought we were being tricked into a Frank soapbox moment.
As far as what?
What soapbox movie? Oh, okay, no, you know what? Let's not get there yet. Let's not go there yet. Okay, because now I understand what you were saying once we started talking. Okay, all right. So I don't know. I was actually like, when you mentioned we wanted to do this, I was extremely excited, which I would normally not say because I've basically sworn off all the X-Men movie universe. Coincidentally, after The Last Stand, it was when I was like, you know what? I'm done with these movies. I'm not going to watch any more of these. I don't like the tone. I don't like the vibe. I don't like the actors. I don't like anything about them. And then the Marvel movies started coming out, and I'm like, okay, I got my comic book movie fix here. I don't need the X-Men anymore to, that. And I'm generally anti-muty to begin with. So it was great. I could just forget these movies existed. And there's been a shit ton of these movies. And you don't realize it until you hit freaking IMDb. And it's X1, X2, X3, Days of Future Past, freaking Wolverine, X-Men Orange's Wolverine, The Wolverine, Deadpool, Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix. I'm just like, I didn't like until you see it all written down. I did not realize there were this many of these fucking movies. So I was trying to, now that I've had my superhero fix with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to kind of go back and watch these movies again in sort of a vacuum and just be like, okay, let's just watch these movies like they're just movies and not have the hype of X1 being the first Marvel movie, the first, Blade. Okay, you know what I mean. I understand, Blade. But I understand. You know what I mean. Batman. I think you kind of have to take X1 in the context of where the Batman franchise was. Well, if I'm missing something, but really, it's Batman and the X-Men. Batman's franchise was like tail spinning by 2000, right?
Yeah.
Where were we at with the Batman movies in the year 2000?
Well, this is 3 years out from Batman and Robin.
It would have been Freeze, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that?
Batman and Robin was, I believe, 1997. And so you were 3 years out from that just absolutely bombing out and just being one of the killing that franchise definitively and killing superhero movies definitively.
So killing the genre. Like that movie was, you killed the genre.
Well, I mean, there are other contributing factors, though. I mean, Steel bombed in a big way.
Schumacher, R.I.P.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A good guy. We got most people, by most accounts, he's a real good guy, and he did make some good movies.
Every time you mention that one, it immediately his name is invoked immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those two, right? Because he did the last two, didn't he?
Yeah, he did Batman Forever as well. Yeah. But yeah, I do think context is important. So, Mac, going into X-Men 1, what was your history with the X-Men franchise?
I hated those damn dirty muties, man. I was an Avengers guy, so I hated that my characters never got any shine. We never got, like, Jim Lee was like a fucking Sasquatch. If we saw Jim Lee draw an Avengers character, it was like, stop the presses. What's going on? Is this a fake? How did this happen? How did he draw Captain America in a shitty, or he drew the Hulk for a, what was it? There was like a little like Jim Lee sketchbook, like 3 pages he did in Wizard one time. And he did a picture of the Hulk, but he did it in only brush and India ink. And it was like incredible. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this dude only draws fucking Wolverine and Jean Jean Grey. Like, that's it. That's all he fucking draws. And this Hulk looks incredible. Like, a freaking Jim Lee run on the Hulk where he just did like fucking like brushed ink would have been incredible. And we never got that shit. And it's because he got hogged by the damn X-Men franchise. And it's like these characters are all fucking same. They're all fucking terrible. And we don't get any Avengers shine with Jim Lee. And that's the kind of stuff I just resented. All these amazing artists, they got hogged by the X-Men franchises, and you never got to see them on any of the superhero books that I thought were actually fucking worth a damn. So I had intense and then merchandise. And we get into merchandise. We get into toys. We don't have any of this shit. It all went to the X-Men stuff. So then guess who's getting the movie? It's the fucking X-Men. And I'm like, oh great, here we go again. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I was still hyped for it because it looked like it was actually going to be a mainstream budget driven movie that was going to make a decent attempt at bringing superhero movies to the masses without the freaking cornball Batman and Robin bullshit.
Everybody freeze.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi. You get cooler. It's cool. Hey, hi. So stupid.
You did not drop off.
And Jim Carrey's freaking package in that Riddler outfit, like, dude, like, just horrible movie.
You know, but I did like that Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face. That was a different take.
If it wasn't so cornball, you think if they had like a serious
more of a
Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face?
Well, I personally would have loved a who was initially going to be the Two-Face?
Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams. Now that would have been awesome.
It'd be funny because he like had one half of him was all like Mr. Smooth, Mr. Colt 45, and the other half of him was like barking at people and stuff. So that would have been a major contrast for sure. One of the problems with Tommy Lee Jones is you weren't sure which side was the Two-Face side and which side was his normal self.
Ouch, dude. Ow, that was mean.
That was mean, I know.
That was mean.
And didn't he have like Drew Barrymore as one girlfriend and
Debbie Mazar, yeah.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be called Leather and Lace, but they thought that was too suggestive, so I think they ended up being Sugar and Spice, which of course now is a sex toy company, so they still lost out on that deal.
So, okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. Well, no, but that's a good point. Is like my mom was a big fan of Tommy Lee Jones, and I ended up being a secondhand fan, and I was looking forward to him playing a Tommy Lee Jones take on that, and instead it was a movie where he's trying to compete for mugging with Jim Carrey. It made it quite the little shit show. Yeah, I was hugely disappointed because I'd hoped that he'd be like the straight man in there. He'd be doing it serious, and then you'd have the goofball other guy. Instead, it seemed like it was a competition for who could eat the most scenery. So that was rough. I remember I thought Batman Forever was all right when I saw it theatrically, and then when I tried to catch it on cable not too long ago, it was just absolutely dreadful, just unwatchable.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that brings me back to X-Men because it's the X-Men podcast. You idiots.
That's what I'm trying to do right.
Idiots. No, but to that point, it was like, well, we got to get a cast for a comic book movie. We got to know everybody. It's got to be Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and Val Kilmer and George Clooney, and you got to get all these celebrities. And then when we get to X1, it was sort of like, okay, yeah, Patrick Stewart's like kind of a celebrity, and you know,
he's Picard. Let's be honest, he's known for the one role. You know, at that point in time, in the year 2000, most everybody knew him as Picard.
And then you got Famke Janssen, who had some shine from GoldenEye, right? But other than that, nobody really knew who Famke Janssen was. And you know, and I remember everybody was pissed off about Hugh Jackman because we didn't know who the hell this Australian guy is, and he's like 6'1" or whatever. And we were all stuck in that Wizard World casting bullshit where we just get
Russell Crowe.
We gotta get Russell Crowe. We gotta get people that look like dudes or whatever. We gotta get women who look like. And they were kind of doing that. Like Famke Janssen was okay. We're like, okay, that was all right. Patrick Stewart as director was like, okay, that's not bad. But for the most part, they weren't going to these like huge names because, and I think the budget might have,
Well, dude, you could tell the first X-Men movie is definitely they're playing it safe big time. Like if it loses money, they didn't lose too much money because it felt really safe.
No, I still think it was pretty risky.
Oh, dude, it was so fucking
formulaic. That was where I had those apprehensions because I didn't know a lot of those actors. But the ones that I did know, I was kind of like, okay, this is okay. But Wolverine was the biggest deal, and he was the biggest question mark. I don't know who the hell Hugh Jackman is. And then the questions are, okay, like how true to form are they gonna keep this? Are they gonna go full on comic book? They're gonna be wearing yellow and blue suits, and they're gonna have Wolverine's hair all spiked up like 4 feet off the top of his head, and what are they gonna? Is he gonna be cutting people up with claws, or what is he gonna be doing? And Ian McKellen, can't forget Ian McKellen as Magneto. I think everybody liked that.
I don't think we knew who he was. Did people know who the hell he was back then? I don't think I knew who the hell he was.
No,
I don't think the Lords of the Ring movies had come out yet. So no,
of course, no, you're right.
That's looking at the context is really important because you had Superman and he had a couple or three successful movies, and then by the time he got to 4, nobody wanted anything to do with Superman anymore. You had Batman, who was still successful up until the end of the 90s, but almost anything else that was tried with superheroes or comic book adaptations just tanked. Did terrible, were mockery of the industry. You could guarantee that if you did a comic book movie, the next thing, it was like video game movies still are today, where the reviewers are already sharpening their knives before they even walk into the fucking theater. Name a successful superhero besides Superman or Batman before X-Men. The one thing they had to buoy the to buoy themselves was Blade, which, let's be honest, really wasn't a superhero movie, but at least it was the first successful Marvel movie. And obviously Blade and The Matrix had a huge influence on what X-Men ultimately looked like. But there was no reason to think that the X-Men was going to do well because nothing had ever done well besides Superman and Batman. Mr. Fixit, where were you coming to the X-Men movie from as a fan?
I had been an X-Men fan for a long time. We're going back from my, as a young kid picking up comic at the local Stop and Go or Circle K. I'd been reading X-Men for, most of my life that I can think of. I've always read X-Men until recently. So for me, the movies were like, I was kind of excited, but wasn't sure where they were going to go with it.
Yeah, and you were still reading the X-Men books. You were.
No, yeah, I was reading the X-Men books at the time. Yeah. Jim Lee's run and all that stuff. I was reading all that at the time. Here's a shocker. Not a big Jim Lee fan of his artwork on the X-Men. More of a Silvestri fan.
Yeah, and that's definitely a hot take for sure. And
that is a sizzling hot take, dude. Have you been selling that for like 20 years? You've been waiting for 20 years to tell everybody, I didn't think Jim Lee was that good. I'm more of a Silvestri
I really
guy.
Don't. I don't like his artwork. I've never really liked his artwork. I think it's okay. He gets a lot of praise for, I guess, the Jim Lee style. Look, to me, guys who get passed up are like, Arthur Adams and Michael Golden. These guys are like badass. In my eyes, badass.
Hey, look.
Even Mike Yola.
None of those motherfuckers.
So distinctive.
None of those motherfuckers drew Avengers either, okay? So there you go. All right.
El Keon. I mean, these are the artists I like. I just was never a big fan of Jim Lee's artwork. I read his X-Men stuff and I was like,
We've talked about how Hulk seems to be the one exception that Peter David was able to get him some outrageously good artists during that time. Outside of Hulk's a complete anomaly. Everybody else was getting freaking Dave Hoover and shit like that. So.
Yeah, somebody, maybe it was Bobby Chase, the editor. Somebody had a good eye finding talent.
Hey, Diabolu Frank, what is your comic book collecting experience with the X-Men?
Like Mr. Fixit, I cut my teeth on the X-Men books. It was one of the first series I collected regularly, but I got burnt out with the books in the early 90s as things got more and more crass. And also really because they kept having the same characters for year after year, it became like this static theme where one of their defining characteristics was always changing out membership and such. And so I tried to go back to the X-Men several times, particularly Chris Claremont had returned after he'd done it for 16 years. He was gone for several years and he tried to come back and it just was not the same remotely at all. It was a real...
The magic was gone.
It was, very much so. And so by the time I'd gotten to the movie, I'd grown to actually outright hate the X-Men. I had the same resentments as you. I also hated Marvel in general because I had become a DC guy and Marvel had been, that used to be my home and now it was this terrible place where nothing but terrible books aside from Hulk. And every time I would go back and try to visit, it was just like this rundown crack hole. There was an element of hate watch to the X-Men.
Because DC was such a glimmer of hope.
In the 90s, they had some really great runs,
DC Bloodlines, listen to that.
I did want to see a successful comic book movie, and those were in the years when you watch most every comic book movie, unless it was just an absolute turd. You would just suck it up and go see that movie. I didn't go see Batman and Robin when it came out in the theaters because it had such bad word of mouth, and because I was poor and I didn't want to feel like walking to a movie theater or walking back from one. But by the time of X-Men, I had a ride. So that's one of the things that brought me in there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now seeing the beginnings of another stage of human evolution.
The truth is that mutants are very real, and they are among us. We must know who they are, and above all, what they can do.
We're not what you think, not all of us.
Who are you people?
What kind of place is this?
I'm Professor Charles Xavier.
I built this school where mutants could learn to focus their powers in a positive way, and also learn that mankind was not evil, just uninformed. You'll be safe here from Magneto, a very powerful mutant who believes that a war is brewing between mutants and the rest of humanity.
There is a war coming. Be sure you're on the right side.
Don't give up on them. Mankind has evolved, not anymore.
But before we progress,
can somebody give me a 2 or 3 synopsis of what X1 was?
The first movie, Wolverine and his amazing friend, a rogue manifests her powers. Whenever she touches somebody, she absorbs their life essence. And in the case of a mutant, she absorbs their powers. And so she can't touch people. She runs away. She ends up in Canada after hitchhiking. Wolverine, Logan, this guy is kind of making ends meet by getting into fight and stuff. The Wolverine, not telling people that he has mutant powers and stuff, because this is a world that fears and hates people with special powers that they're born born with and usually manifest at puberty. Because one of those two mutants is wanted by a mutant terrorist group called the Brotherhood, they have multiple encounters with the Brotherhood trying to abscond with one of those two mutants, although it's a bit of a twist to which one they actually want. And they end up being rescued at one point by the X-Men, who are the sellout, the people who suck it up to the man. They are the Stacey Dashes and Candace Pattons of the mutant world, basically. They're the ones who think that everything's all right, and we just need to stay the course and watch out for our own and not cause any wave. And so they're constantly butting heads with the Brotherhood up until the point where Magneto, the head of the terrorist organization, decides the only way to make people be sympathetic to the mutant kind is to create a fucking mutant machine that's supposed to be powered by his Magneto powers, which he has to funnel through Rogue since she absorbs powers, and of course projecting this energy.
No. I thought the whole point of her was to give her the powers because whoever powered it was going to die.
Exactly.
He didn't want to die.
Right. So he gave her his powers and then was going to use her as the battery, which just adds a whole other layer of stupid to a fucking mutant machine. And so they put it inside the Statue of Liberty because nobody's going to notice you putting a giant machine in the port of a national monument. And then it slowly is supposed to wave out and knock people, mutantize people. But the X-Men had already determined that what it actually does is it destabilizes your cells and kills you. So he's basically just going to commit mass murder. And they all get together and they fight the Brotherhood and they stop that from happening. The end of the X-Men movie.
Hashtag mutant machine.
I wish the music in any of the three movies was as good as the theme song, but almost any.
Oh yeah, the cartoon is awesome.
And you've heard the full orchestral version too, which is also a badass rendition.
Dude, I sing that to myself whenever I'm in an adventurous mood.
Yeah,
I'm humming that to myself.
I'm trying to shit talk a little bit. The X-Men movies, they have perfectly fine scores, and I'm trying to shit talk them by comparing them to one of the best TV theme songs ever. So it's really not working out for me. It was a bad choice on my part to even go there.
I just am still reeling from you comparing the X-Men to Stacey Dash. The fucking soapbox that we were waiting for, Mr. Fixit.
Yeah, I told you.
They're the Terrence Williams of the mutant world, yeah.
Wait, I got a question. Frank, did you and I see this first X-Men movie together?
Yeah.
With Pussycat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
The only reason I can remember that, do you remember that we had that moment of road rage with some kids in their car?
No, feel free to tell that story.
You don't remember that? So that's the only reason I could remember we saw this movie together. We went to a big old theater, you, me, and Pussycat. We saw the movie. As I'm driving in my truck, I remember we were leaving. These kids were acting like assholes in front of us. So me being young, dumb, and full of cum, I think I slammed my gas and flew right by them and left nearly hit them. But, they were being assholes. And then they started following us on the freeway. You don't remember any of that?
No, continue.
Okay,
but
so we're basically speeding on the freeway.
Mr. Fixit had a nasty tendency to
driving insanely fast on the. I just remember Pussycat was really pissed off. She's sitting between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are trying to put your seatbelts on. I never wear my seatbelt because I'm an idiot. And we're doing I think maybe between 80 and 90 miles an hour on the freeway. And they're kind of following us. And they eventually they backed off. That's my remembrance of this movie. I remember that more than I did the movie.
I just remember you rode so many bumpers in those years, and you were such an aggressive driver anyway. You were definitely an offensive driver. So one particular episode of that really isn't going to be remarkable. There were plenty of times where me and Pussycat were white knuckling it while you were driving.
I remember because when we were leaving the theater, you were, and when I was watching, dude, I haven't seen this movie since we've seen it then.
Wow.
I haven't seen it. I've seen it and I was like, when's the last time I saw this movie? And I'm like, I think it's when we saw it in the theaters. I own it, but I never watched it. And so I was like, wow, okay. And I distinctly remember we're driving in the truck and you're bitching about the big machine at the end, the big movie trope of the big machine and how that's so fucking stupid and this. And I remember thinking you're talking about that as I'm road raging, and that specific moment is ingrained in my mind.
Well, actually, that might be the problem, is that I'm so focused on bitching about the mutant machine that I'm not even paying attention to how crazily you're driving, I'm sure that would be the first time I tuned out the entire world and just started cursing. So.
Yeah, I just remember you were just like, that was so fucking stupid. A machine had transported mutants. And I remember laughing at that while these kids are being assholes in front of us, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be interesting. It got interesting. So I remember, that's all I remember from the movie.
Okay.
So I rewatched it, I was surprised. I totally liked that. Well, I don't want to. We'll talk about that in a minute, I guess.
Okay.
But I kind of liked it.
Okay, so let's go person by person. Mr. Fixit, what are some things you liked about X1, and what are some things you didn't like about X1 off the top of your head? Can you think of any things that was like, you know what, they did for being this movie being what it is, they did a really good job.
Let's be honest. For their first outing, trying something new, putting a budget behind it, I thought the Magneto origin story was pretty cool.
You want to elaborate on that just real quick in case people
where
aren't
they
familiar
show
with
the
them?
concentration camp, and he's trying to get to his family, and he's stretching his hands out, which I think they reused in some of the other movies as well, because it was such. I remember that happened in a theater, and the theater was dead silent. That was like you literally start the movie with that, and it's just like, oh shit, they're going there fast. Like they're not gonna play. This is not gonna be a simple. I'm Magneto and I do magnetism. Let me show you me pick up these pieces of metal. It was kind of like, oh shit, he was in a concentration camp, and there's Nazis, and taking like 8 Nazis to hold him in place until somebody smacks him in the face with a gun. And I was like, all right, that was kind of cool. And then I did like the intro.
Wait, hold on. Let me pick. I'm gonna let you keep going. Let me piggyback on that because that's what I have too. When you realize like the last memorable comic book movie before that was Batman and Robin, and then the very first scene of X1 is in a Nazi concentration camp. That is just like you go from nipples on the Batman costume and Jim Carrey's dick wrapped in green, fucking being Green Man, and the first scene of X1 is in Poland in a Nazi concentration camp, and I'm like,
and they show the family.
Way to go, dude!
You do realize they show his parents being marched to the oven.
Yes, dude.
I was like, holy shit. I guess because I hadn't seen it so long, I didn't realize, like, dude, that was pretty intense.
It's a young boy.
A comic book movie?
It's a young boy at the gates of Auschwitz, in the rain, in the mud, screaming for his parents who were about to be murdered. There's not a pun in sight.
It definitely was an indicator that they were going to try to treat it more adult, I guess you could say. It wasn't going to be like a Howard the Duck, or, it wasn't going to be kiddie. I mean, did that feel like a kid movie to you right when it started?
No, not at all. That's why I was like, oh my god! Like I remember the scene.
You walk into these movies and you're expecting like Richard Pryor and shit, and you walk in and it's Schindler's List. I mean, that's a totally different scape to be working off of. But you were saying?
Well, I remember when we saw it, that caught me off guard, because when the movie started and they're talking, they do the intro about mutants, and they're showing that the I guess the gene strain and shit. I'm like, okay, I thought it was going to be very sci-fi kind of feel to it, and then they started with that. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I remember in the theater thinking, I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. And then Wolverine's intro was pretty cool, where he's in a bare knuckle fight in Canada, and I thought that was a funny scene where he tells the guy, don't kick him in the ball, and he goes, why? It's going to piss him off. And I mean, Wolverine beats him up with his adamantium, I guess, skeleton. And then what was what else did I like about it?
The mutant machine, obviously. You love the mutant machine.
I'll agree with Frank. That was really stupid. But where were they going to go with it? I like the fact that Magneto, I don't remember. No, he didn't get caught yet.
Well, what gets you is that they put so much effort into grounding this in reality, grounding it in sci-fi, echoing recent sci-fi movies, and then you get the hokiest, comic bookiest shit to end it off on. Because mutants are already kind of tricky to sell as a science fiction concept. It works better for just the full-on superhero goofiness. But if you're going to spend so much time grounding it in a really fucking harsh reality and couching mutants in terms of race and religion and gender and everything else, then you can't just be like, but mutant machine. It really fucking ruins it for you.
Well, let me ask you this. Was this the introduction of Wolverine being really old? Because I don't remember that ever being mentioned in the comics.
Oh, no, they definitely did. Back when they were doing all the Japanese stuff in the early 80s, I think the very first Wolverine miniseries alluded to the possibility of him being around in feudal Japan. So, no, that wasn't a new thing.
Oh, okay. Because I was trying to think, because I was like, she mentioned, like, he might be older than you.
Professor.
I like the fact that, that was kind of, I mean, it did feel like they were trying to acknowledge a lot of stuff from the books.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at how many liberties are taking with the Batman movies, less so with Superman movies, but the assumption was a lack of fidelity. And they definitely take liberties in these movies too, but so much of the basics of the X-Men are bedrock in these movies that it is amazing how much fidelity they had to the comic. And I was listening to one of the commentary track, and they make a point of shouting out Kevin Feige. And you can see, well, right there from the beginning, one of the key elements to making this shit work is Feige.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think the X-Men was the first thing he did. He was like a consultant on that or something, and he was one of the guys who was really pushing for them to, acknowledge as much of the comic book lore as possible. And all the people in this movie keep talking about how Marvel made a point of putting just crates of comics in front of them to make sure they knew what the hell they were working off of, what they were basing this on, to try to keep that fidelity.
Well, I won't lie. I do like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. I do like that Wolverine.
I've seen interviews. How fucked is it that Doug Ray Scott was making that fucking Mission Impossible sequel, and Tom Cruise forced him to stay and finish that movie, and he loses out on a 17 career, like, double-digit movie appearance, role. How rough has has Doug Ray Scott's life got to be? He's Irish, he plays it down, but that's got to be just gnawing at his gut throughout the rest of his career.
Well, one of my favorite jokes, I was thinking about this when we were watching, or we were going to talk about this. There is a movie where Hugh Jackman makes an appearance, like they're actors on a play, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but they need Hugh Jackman's help, and he does his Wolverine scream, and they look at the actress, and the actress goes, oh, he played Wolverine. That's his Wolverine thing. And it's kind of like a joke where, like, that's all he's known for is the Wolverine. Like, they're waiting for him to do his little yell or grunt. And I remember thinking, that you can't hate that. Like, everything he's ever done, he's always going to be Wolverine. So it's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, I mean, Wolverine to some degree, we'll have to see how it goes for the next actor, but it's kind of like being James Bond. As long as you get to be James Bond that one time and you don't completely fuck it up, you can dine out on that shit for the rest of your life.
How many times has he played Wolverine? Like, you said 17 times?
No, he did it for about 17 years. Was it
years? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, but he still did it at least 8, 9, 10 times.
No, it has to be more than that. All three X-Men movies.
No, but he wasn't in all of them.
All 3 Wolverine movies.
He wasn't
and he did all the next 3 X-Men movies, so it's 3, 6, 9.
No, he didn't do all the X-Men movies. He wasn't in. He had a tiny little cameo, a 1 scene, 30-second cameo in X-Men First Class. He's not in Apocalypse at all. He's not in Apocalypse. He's not in Dark Phoenix. He's not in several of them. So no, it's not. I think they squeaked. Did they get him into the first Deadpool? I don't think so.
I think the second one. He's at the end where Deadpool shoots himself.
But he got a fuck ton of movies. The exact number isn't really relevant. He did a lot of them.
I can't think of any of his other roles actually, except for Swordfish.
Well, he was in that movie. I think it's called The Prince and I or some shit. I'm trying to remember who else was in it. Maybe like Claire Danes or something. But it's like I think he had done that movie after he'd booked Wolverine or after he'd finished with Wolverine. And he goes off and he does this movie where he's playing like a prince, and then Wolverine happens while they're filming the movie. So all of a sudden his quote goes way up. He did that Australia movie with Nicole Kidman. Of course, he's done a bunch of random stuff. I mean, I think he's still in contention for Bond.
The Prestige is my favorite.
Oh, that's right. That's
Nolan movie.
That's right.
Yeah. Prestige is fantastic.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot that. I was just thinking of Swordfish. I always remember that scene where they made him hack while he's getting head. So I thought that was hilarious.
He did The Fountain, right? That's one of Frank's movies.
Yeah.
I've never seen. I think Frank took us to go see that, and I still don't know what I want.
Yeah, me and Pussycat saw that one as well. Yeah. So hey, Mac, who did you see X-Men with?
I don't remember, bro. I have no clue. I don't know who I went and saw X-Men with. I don't know if I met you guys and saw it with you guys, or if
you think maybe you saw it with your brother.
Randos. I don't know.
You think maybe you saw it with your brother or some
No.
He was the X-Men guy. Your brother was a much bigger X-Men fan.
I think he was in college, dude. He was gone. No. 2000. No, he was still in high school. No, I don't go see movies with my brother. What are you, disgusting? What are you freaking talking about?
Who did you see it with?
I said I don't remember. It might have been some coworkers. I don't know. I might have.
You had coworkers? You would have coworkers.
Oh, bro, I've been freaking working my whole life. It feels like. Yes, I had coworkers. Yeah. So I don't remember. No, actually, 2000. You know, you guys were like Mr. Diabolus was my kind of coworker, really. So I don't think. I don't know who I went and saw it with. I saw it in the theater, but I don't remember who I went and saw it with.
So you did see it in the theater, though?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. I think, Frank, did we watch all 3 of these together?
I suspect so. I don't see any reason why.
I believe we did.
You
every
and Pussycat,
I would watch a movie, I remember you being there, and I'm like, I remember we went to the theater. I think we actually went to the same fucking theater for all 3 of them.
It may have been. I mean, I was the perpetual third wheel with you guys for years. So, as you like to say, sometimes I was your buffer for there. So, no, yeah, all 3 of us were always going to see movies together. You were my ride, So it was simple, but almost certainly.
Okay.
I mean, I was there sometimes.
You were there sometimes, yeah.
We're not going to forget that I was there too, right? In the back of that freaking Honda Pilot or whatever with this clown. So let's just chill out. Okay, so what did you
prelude thing?
Did you say what you did not like it? What you did not like about it?
I'm still trying to think of things I did like about it. Because again, I just watched this like 3 days ago. I did not like the costume. I thought some of the dialogue was stupid. Like, what happens to anything that lightning hits, or what happens to a frog when lightning hits it? Everything else, or some shit like that.
One of the worst lines in movie history. It's absolutely terrible.
I'm trying to think.
Okay, well, if you're trying to think, then let me or Franco.
Well, in the commentary track, somebody said you croak, and everybody was like, "Oh!" So yeah, that would have been way less terrible while still being completely stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me go. I got a bunch of stuff written down. So
hold on. And it's so funny when you brought this up. I had just watched or read an article with Holly Berry, and they were asking about her experiences in movies, and she said one of the worst experiences was X-Men because of all the wire work she was doing, and she kept getting sick because apparently she gets motion sickness really fast. So a lot of times, I remember that's one thing I really did not like the wire work in this movie. It looked really bad, and I watch a lot of kung fu movies, so I know good and bad wire work.
Would you have rather had wire work or shitty 2000 CGI moving them around. You gotta pick your poison, buddy, because you gotta. I'd rather have the wire work, to be honest with you.
I just remember there were certain scenes that made no sense to me, like when Wolverine's fighting Mystique and she looks like Wolverine and he cuts her claws. I was thinking, so were those her fingers that he cut off? Or like, there's a lot of logic problems.
That's not wire work. But no. Yes, there was tons of that stuff in this movie that didn't make sense. That's fine. It's comic book. Forget it. How about you, Diabolu Frank? What do you like? Don't like Mutant Machine? Huh? What about hashtag Mutant Machine?
Honestly, for me, I was more inclined to go down character by character. So you might want to go ahead and do yours first.
Okay, so here's what I liked. You guys are ready, and then we'll get to whatever Frank wants to do. I thought the opening Poland scene, like I said, was freaking amazing. Famke Janssen, unbelievably hot. Absolutely peak Famke Janssen. When she showed up on the screen for the first time, I was like, holy shit, what an amazing, amazing human being. Let me see. I was really impressed with how this film absolutely, for as you can say good or bad, has no fat in it. I'm so conditioned to, I'm not saying the Marvel movies have fat to them, but they're just so much bigger and there's so many more characters, especially as they build. It's like that movie franchise is like a snowball. They kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like X1 is within the first 10 minutes, you go from Nazi Germany to Rogue's house where she's stealing her boyfriend's powers to Senator Kelly to Magneto and X-Men standing off in the lobby after Senator Kelly's, which is beautiful, by the way, where they're standing on that weird like catwalk with all the reflections all around them. And then you go straight to Wolverine and Rogue meeting Wolverine. This is all in like 10 minutes of the movie. Like it's like a breakneck pace, and it's because they only had like under 2 hours to fill all the story in. And in a way, it was kind of refreshing for it to just move that fast. Like I didn't need Rogue to go to the hospital with her boyfriend and more. You know what I mean? It was like, you know what? Yeah. I got the gist of it. Let's keep moving. This is good. When Wolverine first popped his claws, and you're like looking between his knuckles, and like his skin splits and the claws come out. I think that still looked really good today. And I feel like some of that might have been a little practical, and whereas I think today it would have been like complete rubbery CGI and it would have looked terrible.
Well, I mean, the fact when she asked him, does it hurt? And he goes, every time.
Every time. It's like, I'm telling you, this movie does a lot right for as much as it does wrong. It does a lot right. Watching this and thinking back at, I stopped watching these movies after the first three, but then I watched Logan. So I've watched the first three movies and I've watched Logan, and I've not watched nothing else of this movie franchise. But the whole time I was thinking, like, why when he was with X-23 and Logan did we never get a Rogue flashback? And I guess it's probably because they retconned all that shit out at some point, but it would have been nice. It would have been nice if that was his kind of go away and he's sort of doing the father surrogate child kind of thing all over again, that maybe when he's driving in the old busted up truck and he can have a flashback to him and Rogue. I think that would have been kind of cool to tie his acting arc together, and they didn't do it. But whatever. It was 20 years ago, so or 17.
Also, his adoption of that girl, the inference is there. Obviously, he has this sort of paternal thing that he does, and that's definitely reflected in the comic well. So I don't think you needed to literally have Anne Paquin show up. I think it's there. I think it comes across.
I like a good old flashback every now and then. Something that threw me off in this movie, he's fucking smoking.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so weird in 2020 to see people smoking in movies. Mm-hmm. And that the star of the movie is smoking a big old stogie throughout the whole thing. And I'm like, that wouldn't be in a movie today. PG-13, I don't freaking care. He would not be smoking a stogie in every single scene. And
especially when Professor X tells him to turn it off, and you see him rub it into his palm.
Yeah, like that's cool as shit. That's why people smoke.
And then you see that just burn mark on his hand. They really did focus a lot on that. Every time you get hurt, they would do that. And he would heal real quick, which I thought was kind of weird.
Let me see. To this day, one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in cinema is when Mystique is sitting across from Kelly, and she flips her legs up and slaps him back and forth with
karate feet.
Like her legs just go like rubber bands and just beat the shit out of him without her moving her hands. That is to this day one of the weirdest things. And she does a lot of weird choreography in all these movies, but that is just so it's just so bizarre looking. And as soon as that scene started, I'm like, I remember that. I haven't seen this movie in forever, and I was like, she's about to kick this dude with her freaking feet, and it's gonna look super weird again. And I was 100% right. Absolutely bizarre, and I don't know what it is. It's just something really creepy about that.
Well, and that's one of my favorite scenes at any of these movies, any of the superhero movies, in fact, is when she gets in the plane and she's supposed to be Henry Gyrich, and they make a point of mentioning that he's been dead for days or weeks or something like that, and she'd been sticking close to the computer. Yeah. Well, that kind of sucks because Gyrich is an Avengers guy, so you get the X-Men movie and they immediately dispense with an Avengers guy, as off screen, right? But he's pretending to be Gyrich. They're in the helicopter, and then Kelly's talking about how he's in the role he needs to be in. He's very much like one of these dudes who he's very convinced of his own righteousness, that the mutants, by the virtue of their existence, are a threat to mankind, and he has to do everything he can to put them under control because they're just too dangerous to be left to their own devices. And this is the reason why I was put on this earth, he's basically saying. And then as that's happening, Gyrich morphs into Mystique, and she tells him, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child. And everything you need to know about the X-Men story and everything you need to know about Mystique as a character within these movies movies is in that fucking line. It's so powerful. And then, of course, she kicks him in the fucking face repeatedly. And one of the times she connected. He had a bad bruise on his face for most of the rest of the filming. They had to cover up with makeup. And I think it was either the director or the cinematographer was talking about in the commentary track about how if it had been anybody but Rebecca Romaine Stamos at the time kicking him in the face, he'd have probably been really pissed off about it. But somehow he let it go under that particular circumstance.
Yeah, I wonder why.
And I'm sorry, if you look at the appliances on Mystique, he probably had a pretty decent view of some bits. So that probably didn't hurt either. He might have missed his mark as a result of that, for instance. It might not have been her fault at all.
For sure. I wanted to go, I thought that, again, this isn't that weird bizarro year where they didn't know if they could afford special effects or if they should still do practical effects. And I thought what CGI they used in this movie really wasn't that bad. When Magneto flips all the guns around at the guys and stuff, some of that's a little CGI, but I think that looks pretty good. I think that's still a great scene. That's right out of the comic books, right? Where he takes all the cops' guns out of their, hands and points it all back at him.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. Now, the bit where he actually fires a gun and he's controlling the bullet, whether or not it pierces a guy's skull after he's fired it. I don't know if they ever did that in the comics, but I'm certain they've had the comic chase after their bearers at some point.
For sure. And then the scene where he splits the train, it was a train, right? That Rogue and Wolverine are in, because she's getting ready to head out of town or whatever. When he starts splitting the train open and then holds Wolverine there with his claws out and then shoves him backwards, and because his arms are out, when he hits the doorway, it like smashes his arms in and leaves the claw marks in the doorway. Looks fantastic. It still looks so good, and that's such a good little detail to put in it. I love some of that stuff.
They had behind the scenes stuff on the discs, and they were talking about that was done practically. Virtually everything you saw there was done by wire work and props and stuff. And so they literally split the train open. And of course, the actors and the passengers are in the train. They're trying to do it 2 times. They're trying to do it a front view, and then they have to match it for a back view. And so when they're splitting the train, they're talking to Hugh about how you do this weird little dance thing. What were you trying to do there? And he's like, no, I was just that scared. I don't know what I was doing. I can't match it because I didn't know what I was trying to do. And apparently Rogue was supposed to do something else, but instead the actress just grabs him by the arm so tight that she scratches him. He bore her mark because, after the spark, then it becomes flames and stuff started burning and they had to put out fires and stuff. So people were legitimately freaked out during that sequence because it was all practical and they were really experiencing something that they didn't think was going to happen. It's kind of like in Alien when they do the chest burster and nobody knows the guy's chest is going to blow up. Most of the reactions you're seeing there are real, they're genuinely shocked because it's actually happening.
Yeah, and it's an obvious practical effect and it looks fantastic. And I was just like, dude, this looks great. Him splitting this whole freaking train car open looks fantastic. As opposed to if they would have CGI'd it, I would have been like throwing up on myself because it would look so bad. So that this movie holds up because of that. I'm not staring at bad special effects because they decided to go practical. Good stuff. Ian McKellen's outfit's freaking terrible. I hate that helmet and it's in all these movies and it looks freaking awful. I can't stand it. And I hate they made it a plot point that that's what protects him from Cerebro. I don't care. It looks so dumb. I don't get it. Let me see what else. If we're gonna talk about actors, I'll skip that. I think the effect of Senator Kelly turning into the weird watery blob monster is like still kind of gruesome. And that's all CGI, but it still looks super gruesome. And then he turns into water and it like is all over Halle Berry's hands and stuff. Like,
but then he really died.
Gross. I don't. Who cares?
I believe so. I know that Magneto tried to make it seem like, do you really know that he died? And the fact that he never shows up again, yeah, he fucking died. Yes, Magneto, your science wasn't.
Dan shows up too, Stanley.
Well, he shows up repeatedly.
Yeah, he's in.
Yeah, but that's his first scene, ain't it? Or his first time he popped in a movie.
Yeah, didn't he? I think he got cut from Blade. So, yeah, I think that was the first time he actually made it into one. It might be the first Marvel cameo of his. And of course, it's super modest, just him at the hot dog stand with no line. But I guess he got to kind of build up his career over the course of the cameo series.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to say before we go just to individual actors, I'll skip all my actor complaints and compliments. Like Mr. Fixit said, I have right here, the fight choreography and wire work is freaking terrible in this movie. It's so bad. When Mystique and Wolverine are fighting, it is so horrible.
Oh, and inside the Statue of Liberty? There's this one scene, when I watched it, I think you can see where they were, what do you say? I guess Wolverine is like in this jumping position, but you could tell he was in that position already, and then they started filming. Like the editing there wasn't correct. Instead of showing him like leaping, it just has him in this weird kind of, I don't know, weird. I remember just little things like that. I noticed.
I feel like in post-production, they were like, let's just make these scenes cut as quickly as possible, and nobody will notice how hokey and bad this looks. And instead, it's just like a mess of shaky, hokey people just flying. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I thought you just punched her. How is she up on the roof now? Like, everything's just moving around everywhere. It's like distracting.
So one thing that did annoy me was when she was punching him, I was like, but didn't the guy, this big brawly guy, punch him in Canada and break his hand? And Mystique is punching and kicking, and I'm like, and in no time is she like, ouch. So I was like, so is she super strong too? Or like, it made no sense.
She survived a pop claw to the stomach too. So it's sort of, I mean, look, some of that's the suspension or whatever, but yeah, okay. Let's talk about some actors now.
And you were talking about too, it being that weird gray period where they were transitioning from practical to CGI, and that continues up through the third movie. Brett Ratner was talking about how they made a conscious choice to film as much as possible practical because they didn't know when they were going to run out of money. And so if they did not have the money to do good CGI on the back end, they knew they had the practical, and they would just make do with that practical aspect. And then in the case of X-Men, that the movie had been developed since like 1985, but once they decided they were going to finally commit and make this movie, and they finally got Bryan Singer as the director, coming off of Apt Pupil and The Usual Suspects, they barrel into the production. They don't have that big of a budget. Decent, it's enough money to do an action movie, but it's not the kind of money they spend on these movies today. And what had happened too is they told him he was going to get a summer release, and he's like, oh, that's great. That gives us an extra 6 months to work on stuff. And it's like, no, this summer. So he actually lost 6 months of the production schedule of a movie that I think took like 4 to 6 months to film, period.
Damn.
So it was really super fucking tight. And I know a lot of that is practical just by virtue of that's, they had to make sure they had something. And it was such a rush job that at no point did they do any advanced screenings of the movie. It literally, they locked it down, and then they took it to Ellis Island for a special showing. And then that's what got released in the theaters nationwide. So there was no time to be precious with this movie. And so any little, rough edges make sense under those circumstances.
Wait, two things real quick. So I did like that scene when Sabretooth gets blasted in the
train
in
terminal?
the Statue of Liberty, and you see him falling through that boat. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know why. When I rewatched that movie, I actually rewinded that scene because I was like, that's actually kind of cool. Because he did have that dumb line where, I want to hear you scream. You owe me a scream. Well,
I'm pretty sure it wasn't him. I'm pretty sure that was somebody they got to dub him. And that's why he didn't have any actual lines for the most part in the movie. But that
was he a wrestler? Who was that guy?
Okay, well, we're going to jump straight to Tyler Mane since you set that up. And I think Mac would probably be able to fill this in better.
But okay.
What's that? Say that again? You got talked over.
Can you tell us about Tyler Mane?
Oh, that guy sucks. No, I don't know. I don't know. Isn't he was like a wannabe wrestler or something? Didn't I look at his IMDb to see what else he's done. He's actually done some stuff since this movie, but this was his first film, I believe.
Well, you guys were interesting at the time, so I think if you don't know who he was, he must not have been too much in terms of being a big wrestler.
No.
I'm sure he was cast because I think he was supposed to be like 6'7", 6'8". He's just this gigantic man, and of course he's got the long hair and everything. I think he looks really good. And then when you hear him talking in the behind the scenes stuff, and he's got this like sort of weirdly high pitched voice, not like high pitched,
no way,
but just not. It's not a high pitched voice, I have to tell you. But it's like if you had my voice and a guy who's 6'7", it would be weirdly high pitched based on what you're seeing visually. And so I guarantee you, every line that's audible that isn't a growl, and probably most growls too, are not that man speaking. But with the prosthetics and the black eyes and everything, he looked really fucking cool. It's just that a big part of Sabretooth is talking shit and being scary, and it's tough to be scary when you're fucking non.
So look, I don't think he looked great. I thought the eyebrows were freaking horrible. I don't know. I thought his teeth looked super fake. Like, I don't think he looked good at all. Thumbs down for me, bro. And then he was obviously in platforms, like the big old Herman Munster boots. And not a fan.
Well, part of the problem, they talked about this, and James Marsden was shorter than pretty much everybody else in the movie, but he's 5'10". He's not like some Tom Cruise or anything. The problem is this was a freakishly tall cast, apparently. Hugh Jackman is like a foot taller than the character he's supposed to be playing. And so even when you go through the trouble of getting a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", up against a guy who's 6'3", doesn't really make that big of a difference. So it makes sense all of a sudden why you'd have to have the Herman Munster boot.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but it just looked super goofy. Anytime I saw him, and I was like, I couldn't stop staring at his shoes. It was ridiculous.
Again, I thought he looked like pretty good cosplay, but the problem was the actual acting. All as he does is play to the strength and throw people around. And it's just visually boring after a while to see him just keep throwing people. And again, because he's played pretty dumb, we know that Bryan Singer was not an X-Men fan, but he was apparently a Superman fan. And knowing that and watching Tyler Mane play Sabretooth, all I keep seeing is Non from Superman 2. In terms of the way the characters are portrayed, there's really no difference between the two of them.
No, I do like that he kept fucking up though. I genuinely like when he dropped Kelly and he just comes up and he's just holding his sleeve, and Magneto's like, not again, dude, you screwed up again, and then locks the door behind him. I think that's funny that he keeps just totally screwing up over and over again. I think that's it. It made me laugh. I don't think it was supposed to be funny, but I thought it was funny.
No, I think it was definitely supposed to be funny. It's just that Sabretooth shouldn't be Bane from Batman and Robin. It's one of those deals where he's got a fan base, and you're really fucking that fan base over. This guy's dumb as shit. But we were just talking about the freakily tall Wolverine. Given that there was a last minute replacement suggested by Russell Crowe, they did pretty fucking good with Hugh Jackman. But at the same time, in all three of the early movies, it's basically a Clint Eastwood impersonation. Let's be honest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And he looks so fucking young. You forget how fucking smooth he was back then.
He's crazy young.
Yeah, and lean, real skinny. They talked about in the commentary how they would schedule the scenes where he was going to have a shirt off for later in the production schedule, so he'd have time to keep working out. And apparently the entire time they're making the movie, he's working out, trying to get beefy enough to do those topless scenes.
Yeah, quote unquote working out. He was definitely not nearly as roided up and jacked as the next two. I'm guessing that the HGH and roid technology progressed quite a bit after the first film, because it is by the time you get to The Last Stand, dude, he is like if you look at Sylvester Stallone in Rock 4, the man is literally a walking steroid. He is so like dude, your human veins should not triple in size over the course of like 2 or 3 years. And I know Last Stand was 6 years later, but dude, he is just like outrageously jacked in that movie. And this movie, he just looked like normally jacked. Whereas like in the other movies, I'm like terrified for him and stuff like that. Anyway, but no, he was in awesome shape, dude. I think he looked freaking great.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to the Wolverine, he's at Marvel actor levels of rippedness. He's jacked, man.
Oh, for sure. I watched these movies in 3 days, and like the dude was transforming, and it was just like, holy hell.
What about you, Mr. Fixit? How do you feel about Hugh Jackman's Logan?
I thought it was great. I liked him. I mean, he's my Wolverine now. I've watched him in so many films.
Are you going to be able to see anybody else?
You could tell he was very intense in his scenes. Like, he really was giving it his all. At least that's what I got. Like, when he's doing his grunts and he's yelling and he's fighting, and he always looked really intense.
He committed.
The hair looked good.
Yeah.
It was weird because
they gave you that Wolverine look without going, like you said, 4 feet above his head. So
it kind of works because he sort of looks like he got a pompadour. He's sort of like got a side pompadour. So you still have that lift, that distinctive Wolverine lift, but you could actually believe somebody would style their hair that way.
Yeah, and he just had like mutton chops. Like I thought it was fine. And I would say, Mr. Fix talked about the uniforms. I know that was a big point of contention when the movie came out, that they had to put him in black leather or whatever. But now in retrospect, I think it looks fine. I think it's just normal to make some more mainstream adjustments to these superhero costumes. And then didn't these costumes basically end up going back into the comics several years later? Like, they ended up wearing.
Frank quietly was using them.
Right.
For a while.
Right. So it's weird. Like over time now, it's just sort of like normalized. They didn't bother me in the slightest bit, any of the costumes.
I just thought it was really boring. Back then, everybody wore black. Batman wore black. The Matrix characters wore black. X-Men wear black. It just seemed really dull to me. And I think they look pretty decent in the leather. I'm glad that they added accents later on to give them more individuality. And I'm glad that we got away from that as superhero movies became more accepted. But at the time, just seeing a bunch of people in leather was super fucking dull to me.
Well, no. But the X-Men wear a standard uniform, like the Fantastic Four. The Avengers don't. They've never worn like a standard uniform, unless you want to count the bomber jackets, right? So I think it's just sort of, if they did another X-Men movie, these dudes will probably all be in, or don't they? I mean, I keep forgetting they continue to make these movies because I haven't watched them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still kind of wearing uniforms, right? Whenever they do these other movies,
they get more colorful over time. They get less generic looking, generic sci-fi looking. One complaint I definitely have about the movie and Hugh Jackman in it is that I really think it's a bad idea to make him a POV character, and I think it's a bad idea to introduce him to the X-Men in the first movie alongside Rogue. Because you just don't have enough time for there to be an investment between the characters in those movies. And Jackman spends so much time being like spook feral guy who's like hiding behind pillars and shit. It's a little pussified, honestly, especially watching it in retrospect. He's such a kind of a fraidy cat. And because he doesn't have those deep connections with the individual team members, when he starts, Dick and Cyclops stuff, it doesn't really feel justified. He just seems like a real raging asshole from all 3 of these movies, really, but especially the first one. It's just like, who the hell is this prick and why should we care? His powers aren't that impressive. And then, of course, he ends up being like the star of the movies, less so than I remembered. I remember really complaining about how much Wolverine there was when I first saw the movie. And now I look back and I don't really, I'm not sure that anybody really stars in this movie. It's really such a plot driven movie that a lot of times the characters are just there to serve the plot. But we definitely have too much Wolverine, and I think it's at the wrong point in his career. I think he probably should have already been established with the X-Men instead of trying to act like him and Rogue are the 2 rookies on the team and shit.
I heartily disagree, and I think this movie needed to have as much Hugh Jackman in it as possible. Because when we talk about the other actors, whenever you want to move on, because I thought his performance was pretty good.
It felt a little more Wolverine-esque than the other characters.
Because he's good.
Remember, even for a while, they even thought he was Magneto's target.
Yeah, that was the nice plot.
Yeah.
We thought that was good. So let's move on to the next actor and/or actress, Diabolu.
Well, I mean, the 2 characters that are being introduced in the movie to the rest of the members are Wolverine and Rogue. Rogue's played by Anna Paquin. She had not done a ton of stuff before this movie, but she'd been working since she was a kid. I think she got some really good notices for The Piano with Harvey Keitel and Holly Hunter. I think that she had done. Had she done Fixit? Would probably know. Had she done 25th? No, she hadn't done 25th yet because that was after 9/11. She hadn't done a ton of stuff though. I think Almost Famous maybe around the same time as this, but she wasn't really that well known. Did either of you have any experience with her going into this movie that might have prejudiced you to her performance?
No, just the Piano I'd heard about. I never saw it.
Was Buffalo Soldier before or after this?
I think after. Yeah, after. So no, not so much. What did you guys think about quote unquote Rogue?
You want me to go? She was terrible. I thought she was oh my god. It was anytime she was on screen doing that accent, it was nails on a chalkboard to me. And I'm like, well, why did we have to do the accent? I don't understand why you need to do the accent. And like, it was just not good. She was just not good. And I don't know, there was I don't know if it was her facial expressions too, and lots of screaming. And I just didn't want her on the screen at all. And I understood that she had to feed the mutant machine or whatever. But other than that, I just had no and all the woe is me, I can't touch anybody over and over and over again. And I'm like, wow, you're really setting her up to be like the cornerstone of this franchise along with Hugh Jackman. And my feelings for the two of them were completely opposites. Like I don't want to see another movie where she's in it even more doing that X. Like I don't want that. I do not want that at all. So no, big thumbs down.
To me, the lame part was her power was I'll steal your power and that's it. And that's it.
And it never goes anywhere in all three movies. That's the shit for 3 movies is I steal your powers for a second and that's it. And it's no thank you. Bad.
That was a little annoying.
She should have been Kitty Pryde or she should have been Shadow or Jubilee or somebody that because her power is too weird. Her power was only worth the shit after she stole Carol Danvers' power anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the only when she could fly and punch shit and put holes through walls. That's when she was cool. But kind of being I guess the equivalent of like a parasite, basically, just like I cipher your power, I get your power for a little bit, and then it'll fade out. I don't know.
Look when Wolverine claw popped her and then she touches him to get the healing. Was that in X1? I want to make sure I don't get any of these.
No, it's true.
Yeah, I believe that's X1. Yeah, no, I'm doing that too. I'm trying to
it actually happens twice over because they established
1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, they established that specifically because of the ending is he has the bad dream and he pops his claws into her and then he has to save her or she has to save herself actually by kissing him and getting his healing factor. And then at the end, when she's dead from the mutant machine, Wolverine tries to give her his life and eventually it takes, and that's how she survives again. So yeah, it's a very important moment to set up the ending of the movie essentially.
Yeah, and so I liked that. I didn't have a problem with the ending. I didn't have a problem with it there. But other than that, I just generally did not care for her on screen. And I'm not even saying a different actor couldn't have made the Rogue side of it work. But I just the whole time I was just thinking like, bro, I can't take 3 movies. Her talking like I'm Rogue, you guys. I can't touch you. I'm so upset about it. I was like, no, I'm over this. It's bad. I don't want to do that.
And Mr. Fixit, would you consider yourself a Rogue fan from the comics or not? Or was she just another person in the X-Men?
A Rogue fan from the comics.
Yeah, like did you care about that character from her comic book appearance?
That's a no.
No, I mean she always had a link to Mystique. Wasn't she like Mystique's daughter
but I mean I'm talking about like daughter. I'm not concerned about her link to Mystique. I'm concerned about her link to you, Mr. Fixit. How do you feel in your heart about this character?
I always thought, in the comics, it was always, even in the cartoon, it was always cool when she touched a villain and she absorbed their power and then she would get kind of evil. So I always liked that aspect that she took on their personality. I thought that was neat in the book. As far as the movie, she was lame.
Well,
if she would have touched Logan and then started like smoking had like a craving for a cigar and she couldn't get rid of it, that would have been like something.
She started hitting on Jean Grey. Hey girl, how you doing? Huh?
Dude, something that would or was start being like a super huge dick to Scott. Like give me something. Give me something. Or maybe make it.
Now what would have been cool is if she touched him and all of a sudden she has like these fucking bone claws shoot out of her fist or something like that. I would have been like, holy shit, that would have been neat. But I mean, she's basically a parasite. She ciphers powers from one person to the point where they're weak. I mean, that was her shtick. She took out what's his name. I think I'm already at the second one. I mean, that's kind of her shtick in all these movies where she's just kind of knocking people out. That's her power. She knocks you out by touching you. Nothing else.
And it just never goes anywhere. It never moves. So no, I did not care, and I did not care. So yeah, I didn't care for Anna.
Well, one of Rogue's weaknesses has always been mono. She never kisses anybody in any of these movies, and that was kind of her thing too in the comic books. She'd kiss you and then she'd run off with your powers. It was kind of cool. That's where the name Rogue came from. I remember being really put out by that character because obviously I wanted Kitty Pryde. That's my X-Man, and so Anna Paquin was clearly not playing that because of the Southern drawl, and she obviously wasn't playing Rogue because she didn't have the cool powers yet, and she clearly was the character most changed to fit the movie and without regard for who she was in the comic. Watching it today, I don't really mind because I've just accepted that's who Rogue is in these movies. It's definitely a place where when these characters get reintroduced in the MCU that they could make a lot of people happy by queuing more closely to the comics. But I kind of accept it, and I like Anna Paquin. I know that she has her quirks, and rewatching it, Sookie, a lot of Sookie because especially with that porn accent.
I won't lie, dude. I loved her in that show. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, at least the first few seasons, not the end there. Nobody loved anybody in that last season.
I've never seen the end of True Blood, so don't talk.
It's terrible. It's one of the worst series endings. The last couple or 3 seasons are some of the worst television. We finished it, but it was an absolute fucking hate watch. But yeah, the early seasons of True Blood were super addictive, and she was a lot of fun. And I was happy to finally get to see her naked, so that was a plus. But yeah.
Well, there we go.
Come on,
Brandon's
man.
a Frank bang.
look, 25th Hour where she's objectifying that movie, I was digging that. And then she's in Buffalo Soldiers where she's the Brass's daughter and shit. Yeah, I kind of want to see her naked. I was pretty happy about that finally happening in True Blood. So another recommendation for the series. But we can talk about somebody where probably none of us are sexually attracted to, I assume, Patrick Stewart as Professor Charles Xavier.
Number one, make it so.
I love Patrick Stewart. The man is a world treasure.
Yeah.
I, at the end of this movie, was like, did Patrick Stewart suck in this movie? Maybe suck's a strong word. I didn't find.
Did he play Picard in the movie?
No. He did not have.
He did
not have nearly the emotion that Picard would have. And
he just didn't have the little flute that Picard played. But for the most part, it felt like Picard the whole time.
I don't think so. I felt like he was just reading lines in this movie. Like I didn't feel like he was upset at the mutant cause or he was happy at a mutant triumph or I just feel like he and Eric would just talk and then he'd talk to Logan and be like, Logan, hey man, you gotta chill out. I'm gonna help you remember stuff. And he was like, okay. Then he'd go talk to, hey, we gotta just chill out here. I'm just gonna talk to you. And I don't know. I did not think it was an inspired performance.
Well, if you want to see an inspired performance of his, watch him in Excalibur, and he's just like intense. From watching that to watching this, I felt like it was Picard. Like, we could have been on a fucking holodeck, and he was playing with mutants. He felt the same. He talked the same. He was still the same fatherly figure. He had this group of misfits that he kind of kept together. Yeah,
I guess so. I just, like I said, I felt like he was just reading lines.
Well, you gotta remember, Pussycat loved Star Trek Generation, so we watched that a lot. So she had a crush on him. That's why we were there for her anyway. And I don't know, it just felt like he was playing the same character, which was fine. I mean, they're kind of similar. They're both captains in a sense of their groups, and they're the fatherly figure. And
they both spend a lot of time in a chair.
Spend a lot of time in a chair, and they're discovering and moving. They're trying to move things forward. So
whether or not Patrick Stewart phoned it in, I think back to fan castings that I think went awry. Like, I'm not a big fan of Christian Bale as Batman. I was not into Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, but I think this is an instance where the fans came on for they all said you got to put Patrick Stewart in this. Wizard Magazine said it. They did it, and all he had to do was be Patrick Stewart, and that was plenty enough to pull off Charles Xavier. So I have no criticisms because I got exactly what I would expect.
Well, think about it. At that time, who could have pulled that off?
He was perfect. No, he did. The thing about Patrick Stewart playing Professor X is he basically would have to have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. He basically could just sit in a chair and talk, and we'd all see Professor X. So I can't tell you whether or not he was phoning it in because I didn't see Professor X. Like, okay, that's the perfect casting choice. It worked out just fine. You don't have to do anything special to make it work. He didn't put on a Batman voice or anything like that. He didn't fuck it up. So yeah, it's perfect. Patrick Stewart's Xavier. Done. No.
And I do love that scene where Wolverine is introduced to all of them and refers to them as wheels.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
No, I don't want to say I thought he was bad as Professor Xavier. And maybe this is just how Professor Xavier is in the comic books, and that's fine. I just felt like I thought Sir Ian McKellen won up to him in this movie. I thought Sir Ian McKellen was much better as Magneto as Patrick Stewart was as his counterpart as Professor X. I'm just saying. I didn't want them to pick anybody else. It's not like Anna Paquin where I was like, bro, they should have picked anybody else, and she wouldn't have been as annoying and with bad accent, et cetera, et cetera. I thought Patrick Stewart was fine in the next two movies. I think he's good in those movies too. I think he's better in the next two movies than he was in this movie. But in this one, I was sort of at the end like, man, he was really just like, I don't know. I was not blown away by his performance. Where it looks like Ian McKellen put in like a real effort in his Magneto performance. So that's where I was just a contrast between the two.
Well, anyway. I think he had to work harder though, because the fact is we're coming off of looking at Jim Lee drawing this ripped out, handsome, Magneto with the white hair and everything. And of course, time wise, if you're going to do something that's realistic, if you're going to set his early days in a concentration camp, he has to be old as fuck, even in the year 2000. And first seeing Ian McKellen is like, no, that dude is definitely old as fuck. And he's had, he's got to just being straight. He's got big ears. He's got a big nose. I don't know who the fuck this guy is. I might have seen that people before I saw this one, but I don't think so. So I'm like, this isn't my Magneto. And he's got the dumb looking helmet and the funky looking costume. And I just had strong reservations. So he had a lot more to prove to me as a viewer. And I think he did put in the work. And I do think that the strength of his performance made me accept him as Magneto. And in fact, in part because I never liked Magneto very much. He was an intimidating, powerful figure. But in terms of personality, I always thought he was a bit of a snooze. And McKellen just gave him this wicked glee. He's obviously like, he's driven and he's a believer in his cause. He's a zealot, but he also takes a lot of pleasure in just fucking with people. And I really enjoy that.
Smirk.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He does that smirk that's kind of like, yeah, you're an asshole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He definitely knows that he's the shit, and he definitely knows that he can fuck shit up, and he's got that arrogance about him. And it could have been easy to just make him a arrogant jackass, but instead he does have that wicked glee about him. So he befriends you with that. That smile makes you want to sit at his side and watch him do the bad shit.
And I think I said in our X-Men podcast a few months ago that like I was really like that it's a testament to how bad these X-Men movies were that you were never really that sympathetic to Magneto. And now that I rewatched all three of them, I have to take that back a little bit. And that I actually, sometimes what the dude is saying makes a little more sense than I remembered. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I wasn't like, it's not obviously the X-Men are good and obviously Magneto's bad. He did some pretty bad shit that, make a little more polarizing, but it was a little closer than I remember rewatching these films. So I wanted, and Ian McKellen was much better than I remembered him in these movies. So thumbs up on Ian McKellen. Excellent job, sir. Underrated comic book movie villain, Ian McKellen.
I mean, I did like his performance, his interpretation of Magneto. We'll talk about it later. As the movies evolve, he kind of evolved too. Mm-hmm. Where this one, he's all about, saving all the mutants, and he's definitely the Malcolm X of the mutant universe by any means necessary, which I kind of liked about. Besides that, yeah, I liked him. I liked the character.
I talked a little bit about how the X-Men are what Fox News opinionators would tell you who Martin Luther King was. It's like the whitewashed, appropriated version of, the good person who's fighting for social change. Pretending like there wasn't any conflict, pretending like you were ever on this guy's side when he was still alive, that kind of shit. And, we're seeing in modern times, nobody fucking listens to you until you raise a real fucking stink. Nobody gives you anything when you just say please. And so it viewed from that lens, it is hard to be on to be on Charles Xavier's side because, and they address this in the movies as the movies progress. He's the respectability politics mute. And, I don't know that he does as much for the cause ultimately as Magneto does. Magneto obviously does a lot of harm for the cause, but at least there's progress. At least there's something happening where I think Xavier would allow for a slow, steady decline in the lifestyles of mutants because he just didn't have the fight in him, because he wasn't willing to actually take humans on. He was always going to be the guy who took on mutants that threatened the status quo. That was his whole thing. If he didn't have a Magneto to fight against, I don't know that he would really be helping anybody. I think he'd just sit there and talk pretty and not actually get anything done. So yeah, Magneto's definitely valuable. But speaking about undervalued players, this is definitely an instance of me bringing my baggage to the movie. I grew up in the years when Cyclops was the guy that everybody fucking hated and everybody shit on, and everybody was Team Wolverine and nobody was Team Cyclops. And when I saw this movie, when Wolverine was a dick to him, I was like, yeah, be a dick to Cyclops. Cyclops sucks. And the actor they cast in that role, he was just another pretty boy. So I didn't know who he was. He didn't matter to me. In the years since, I've seen James Marsden in a lot of stuff. He seems like a really cool guy, really fun dude. He's supposed to be a really funny guy. I recognize him now behind the shades. And the fact is, watching the first few movies, this dude just shows up and tries to take your girlfriend and steal your motorcycle. Wolverine's a fucking asshole, and Cyclops has every reason to fucking hate the dude. And in the few moments they let him fight and do cool shit, he actually looks pretty fucking cool. I'm actually really surprised at how much I enjoy James Marsden as Cyclops in these movies, but particularly the first couple. Well, actually the first one, they really fuck him in the second one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Actually, no, it's hard. Both the second and the third one, they really fuck this guy. But I think he has some really cool moments in the first movie, or at least a few.
Yeah, and I thought he looked great. I thought the red lensed Oakleys very late 90s, early 2000s, but I think it works really good on screen. It looks kind of futuristically movie propped, even though you can go spend $100 on those at some freaking whack Oakley store back in the day. But yeah, I thought he looked great. I thought he was fine. But that was one of the failing of this movie being too tight. You didn't have time to build some of that Wolverine. It literally, like, Wolverine walked in and took the dude's broad and then took his bike and then took, you know what I mean? Which is like, whoa, like this escalated rather quickly. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of that. But what we saw, I thought he was fine.
He was like the alpha and Cyclops is the cuck. It's like, it really is this fucking bully, man. He's a total jackass.
I'm not going anywhere near that one. So, on to the...
Well, no. Fixit hasn't talked about Cyclops at all.
I kind of missed when he had the skull cap.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like, thank you for that valuable comment there, Mr. Fixit.
I mean, dude, it's Cyclops. Like, it's Cyclops. What's he gonna do? I'm telling you, walking into this movie, I knew the movie was all about Professor X, Magneto, and Wolverine. I've just like Storm. Did Storm stand out to you?
Are we moving on to Storm?
Yeah, I think that's a good transition. Let's go with that.
She's fucking terrible in this movie, dude. And I never. Okay, look, we all gave her shit because she was bad in this movie. She stands there and doesn't do anything. Everybody was already like, what? When she was cast anyway. But I didn't realize she tried to do an accent in X1. Yes, dude. She's trying to do an African or some. She's trying to do some sort of accent. And it is. That. I turned to my wife. I was like, is she just doing an accent? And she was like, yeah. And it wasn't good. And I'm like, I never realized. I don't know if it was just the noise in the theater or what. I never realized she was trying to do an accent. She doesn't have enough lines for you to really like piece it together. But man, is she bad in this movie? Oh gosh, dude, sir.
I feel like because Halle Berry was at least something of a name when they did the first X-Men movie. I feel like they would have had to have used more of her, like recorded more on film of her. And I feel like that must have all just ended up on the cutting room floor because that accent was so fucking awful. They just like kept her present to a minimum, probably because of the performance. Yeah, she is just wooden as hell too. Absolutely. She's not. And again, when they're doing the wire work, she looked terrible doing the wire work. She looked terrible in costume. She doesn't know how to walk in that suit. It's just I hated her when I first saw the movie, and she's not redeeming herself in any way. And watching it 20 years later.
Yeah, dude. It's just, and then they don't know how to use her powers in this movie or any of these movies. They don't know how to use her powers. So it's this, hey, Storm, time to look up at the sky so your eyes turn white, and then we blow some freaking CGI in. Like, it's just like, you don't have a clue. Why is she even on? I mean, you got to have her on the team because she's one of the more popular X-Men, but talk about just not having a single idea as what to do with this person in this movie.
But they didn't.
And then on top of it, when she's in the movie, she's terrible. So
she's kind of like a damsel in distress half the time, isn't she?
I don't know. Is she? I don't know. It's.
I mean, she strikes light. I mean, Sabretooth apparently is her villain because he's wanting to hear her scream through the whole movie.
Yeah, he chokes her and then he torments her in the Statue of Liberty. You know, I see where you're coming from with that, but it's just you're so used to associating Wolverine and Sabretooth that really it was like the predator prey kind of thing, and it really shouldn't be a situation where somebody's powerful as Storm should really have to worry about a guy like Sabretooth. You know, that's not her kind of combat.
And then, of course, we talk about how she had the worst line with Toad.
Yeah, and that's the thing too.
Why did she have more one-on-one conflict with Sabretooth than Wolverine did? Like, so stupid.
But not just that, she never gets to beat Sabretooth, she beats Toad. So why did you set up the animosity between her and Sabretooth if in the big finale she's going to fight Toad, who she's had nothing to do with the whole movie?
Yeah, dude. I'm telling you, and I'll continue to say it throughout the podcast, this movie was real close to being like pretty damn good. I don't know if I've even said that yet.
Really?
Maybe it was. This movie was real. Dude, they just made a few just dumb decisions that, in my opinion, made this movie kind of go off the rails a little bit. And one of them is those. Anyway, we'll keep going like that. But yeah, Storm, no good. That's a big thumbs down for me, bro.
A much earlier,
and nothing changed over time because I think that was unanimous when the movie came out, and it's 100% even to this day.
An earlier incarnation of the X-Men movie was going to be directed by Catherine Bigelow, and they had talked about, although I hope that they were never serious about this, they talked about Bob Hoskins playing Wolverine, but more importantly, Angela Bassett was supposed to be Storm, and she is my forever Storm. She should have always been Storm, and I don't know that I can think of another actress that I've been exposed to yet that is more Storm to me than Angela Bassett. Even when she's playing Black Panther's mom, I still see Storm. You know, it's like, oh, they're brother and sister now because Storm is his mom. You know, I just can't let it go. Angela Bassett should have always been Storm. She would have been perfect for that character, and I'll never let it go. But also, Halle Berry sucked.
Yeah, dude.
I think they were trying to do the Storm with the mohawk with her kind of vibe, where she's real. I don't know, dude. I really don't know which Storm this is because of all the X-Men comics I've read, I've never seen Storm like her. Storm has always been a very strong woman.
Yeah,
like,
she
led the team.
She's definitely like Byrne Aerostorm or Cockrum Aerostorm, where she's a little bit more of the fish out of water, a little bit more mild, a little bit more of a peacenik and a peacemaker. She's not a leader yet. She hasn't been, had that gauntlet that was thrown at her in the like 170s or so. So she's just sort of this milquetoast character who looks pretty and's got a good power set, but doesn't have a lot to do.
Okay, I guess early Storm, you're right, where she was in that the outfit with the wings,
and she had the thigh high boots,
the tiara.
Back when she was more of an interesting visual than an interesting character.
You're right. I guess that's the Storm they went with. Because my Storm will always be, one of my favorites is where her and Cyclops are fighting over leadership of the X-Men, or when she's leading them against, the Marauders, or those were always my favorite.
Yeah, or the story where she's getting hunted in the world's most dangerous game rift, where she's going up against the adversary, all the Barry Windsor Smith guest issues. Yeah, the badass.
Oh yeah, that's when she had a relationship with Ford, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, those were all really good. Those were my Storm.
And so now that we're talking about strong female presences, what about Rebecca Romijn as Mystique?
Nailed it.
I mean, the hilarious thing to me is I could not, watching this movie, to think, holy shit, Mystique becomes literally the cornerstone of this entire franchise after a couple of years. Like, it's so weird to think where that character goes, but was like weirdly extremely important in all three of these movies, right? Like, it's like Mystique, really? Look, she didn't talk in this movie a lot. I thought the makeup was great. I thought the effects whenever she would transform people were pretty good. The choreography and her fight scenes were pretty terrible, but other than that, I thought she was fine, and I thought they used her fairly well.
I kind of missed the old Mystique costume, the white with the gun and the skull necklace.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, sure, but look, I mean,
this was more practical. It made more sense. Like, if she's gonna be a shapeshifter, her body has to shift. The old comic book was always lame because she would shift, but her clothes shifted too, which never made sense to me. But she was always kind of like Magneto's second in charge. I always liked that about her.
Well,
I was just surprisingly. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
When you're watching the movie and you've got a literal Toad and then Sabretooth as a Toadie, to have another, she's the only member of the villainous team that really feels like she is on the same level with Magneto. And obviously she doesn't have the same power level, but in terms of her effectiveness, she's right up there because she gets so much shit done. And she radiates, even though she doesn't have a lot of lines, and she was a model, and I know a lot of the reason why she got cast, because it was in the early days of her trying to be an actor, was because of her look, because she was somebody you could paint blue and basically she's going to be naked for the entire movie. And you got to have the body and the ability to move that body in a convincing way to make it look good. But I think that she actually there's an intelligence, there's a cunning that she gets across through her looks, through her body language. You don't underestimate her, because even though she doesn't talk a lot, you can see wheels turning behind her eyes. You really respect her. She's not dumb like the other characters. She's just quiet, and she's thinking about how she's going to fuck your shit up, and then she fucks your shit up. I think it's very impressive for a role that had so little dialogue, and it's a real strong contrast to Halle Berry, who doesn't get a ton to work with either, but does fuck all with it. I think that Rebane puts as much as she can into what she has, and it comes across.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she and I like the way they use the character, even when she's sneaking into the X Mansion to pose as Iceman, to tell Rogue, everybody's mad at you, they're all pissed off, you better get out of here. I'm not like stuff like that. That's good. They were using her like that's how you would use a shapeshifter to manipulate and get somebody in your grasp, right? I thought they did a good job with it.
No prizing though. I still can't believe that she was able to simulate Professor X's eyes so perfectly that she could get into Cerebro, but I'm pretty sure I'm overthinking it.
Well, my only
just
thing,
suspend your disbelief.
That was the only time I was like, so is she able to mimic you by sight? Because I always thought it was by touch, but I couldn't remember.
Don't think about it. She does it later on. It does she shift to somebody and use it like a handprint reader. So she's even copying people's like fingerprints. Like you just got it, guys. Like
no.
Wolverine cut her claws off. That should have been her hand.
Trust me. When I saw that, I thought it was her finger. When they showed her on the ground, I thought she was gonna be missing fingers or something.
No, dude. With these movies, especially with Mystique, you gotta just fight through it, dude. Because it's already much of this stuff doesn't make sense, and with her, they just make that shit as it goes along.
So jumping back over to the X-Men, Famke Janssen as Jean Grey. Her eyebrows do so much work for her. She just got such a cool looking face, that as long as she keeps quiet and looks at you with those slightly arched eyebrows, she's Dr. Jean Grey now. I buy it. She has that intelligence about her.
She looked a little cracked out for me.
Well, I mean, in the first movie or what that was down the line?
Not in the first movie. By Last Stand,
dude, she was like bone thin.
No, by Last Stand, she is like overly dieted to fit into a superhero costume. By Last Stand, she looks a little emaciated.
I don't know. She's a good actress, but it looked a little cracky.
She doesn't get a ton of dialogue. I thought she was really good in the opening scene where she's giving the demonstration or giving the speech to the Senate, and I do think I would buy her as a doctor and stuff, but she doesn't get a lot to do. She doesn't get a ton of lines. The whole Wolverine relationship thing, for her being, it diminishes her because she shouldn't be as interested in Logan in the time frame that's being offered. But I think at least in the first movie, I buy her as Jean Grey. She's my favorite Jean Grey so far, which isn't saying a ton. I thought she did a nice job, but I'm not going to praise her the way I did some of the other actors, because she has her moments where it's kind of like, but overall, I thought she did a good job.
Yeah, I thought she was good too. I didn't have any complaints about her as Jean Grey. They didn't give her a lot to do in this movie. I don't think that was her fault. And I thought when she was in it, she did what she could. Like I said, I wish they would have spent a little more time on the Scott Summers, Logan, Jean Grey triangle, because I think that's something that's really unique to the X-Men. Like, you're never going to have a JLA movie, right? And you're going to have some love triangle between Wonder Woman and like Booster Gold and shit. Like, nobody's going to watch that. Nobody cares. And the same thing with the Avengers movies. Like, you try and do some little stuff like that, like whatever, like Bruce Banner and Black Widow. Like, nobody cares about this stuff.
We all wanted to burn that movie down. It was like, how dare you? So yes, it's not safe to do that. Yeah,
it's so unique to the X-Men film, just like having Reed Richards and Sue Storm be married, and like this is like a really unique aspect of what makes the X-Men a little bit different. And I felt like, man, you could have just cut out some of this other stuff and kept the runtime probably about the same, but spent an extra scene or two hyping up why you're going to have this continued rivalry between Scott and Wolverine, and why does Jean Grey fall away from Scott. Like, you got to show me where Scott's too engrossed in being the leader of the X-Men and he's kind of neglecting Jean, and then suddenly Wolverine shows up and he's a broken puppy and she's helping him put his mind together. But give me something a little bit more other than like you said, they just show up and they just start fighting and she's like all over Logan and absolutely hates Scott. It's just like bro, it's really bad.
I think the cartoon even addressed better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But that's such a great unique aspect of X-Men that you just can't do with any other team. If you do it with any other team, you're just aping what they're doing. So I was like, they had it, and it was like, it's cool that it was there, but they certainly didn't spend enough time on it, especially for how much of a center
he had 6 months cut off his ability to film, and I'm sure there was a lot of shit he probably would have flushed out if he had the time.
Well, I'm sure somebody said Rogue is the star of this movie, so you're gonna have to. This has got to be Rogue driven. I don't think I wouldn't expect that was not. Well, who knows? I don't know. But again, certain scenes that were in this movie, I think probably could have gone away, and you could have given me 2 more love triangle scenes with those 3 to help me buy into it more. Well, especially because really it kind of becomes a backbone of the other 2 movies. It's continued through the next 2 movies.
Yeah.
So you could have given me a little more in the beginning.
Anything on Jean?
She's just incredibly attractive. I thought that like because she's, and like you said, everybody in this movie is like huge, dude. She's just like, her legs go on forever. She looks CGI. I don't even know how to. She was a huge Famke Janssen fan. Saw some pictures of her recently. She fell in love with the cheek implants, as most aging stars do nowadays. And I'm not saying female stars, because it seems like the dudes do this stuff as much now as ever. She's had a lot of injections and stuff, and it's sad. It makes me sad. But for X1, thumbs up. Hey, way to go.
Talking about how the movies get crowded right from the very beginning, and I think maybe one good example of that is Shawn Ashmore as Iceman, Bobby Drake. You've got to do the school stuff. You've got to make sure that everybody knows that everything's centered on a school for gifted youngsters. But it's like, it's kind of distracting that you have to work in all this stuff with Iceman and the students on top of the teachers that were kind of our focal characters. So what do you guys think about Bobby Drake and how much screen time he got?
I thought he didn't really get. I thought that it was okay in this movie because it set up the Mystique twist where she jumped in. I thought for what the movie was trying to do, he was in it just enough. You know, I think that
Pyro was in this one too, right?
I don't know if he was in this
he's
one.
in the next one.
Maybe he was. I have to look.
No.
I don't think he's in this one. I think he comes out the second one.
It's the other kid that creates that flame ball that Bobby turns into ice.
Well, no, surely that was supposed to be Pyro.
Yeah, but they went with different actors. I mean, until you brought him up, I totally forgot he was in the movie.
All right. hey.
No, Iceman has never been my favorite. I don't know how many people would count him among their favorites, but I want them to spend more time with the characters I feel more strongly about. But Iceman is one of the founding X-Men. It is important to show the school stuff. I do think that his relationship with Rogue brings something to the movie, so I couldn't say cut that out. I think he's about the best Iceman you could have gotten because I actually like the guy, and I generally don't give a crap about Iceman, so he must have been doing something right.
Yeah, I wasn't like, oh, get this guy off the screen, because there are people in the next couple movies where I say that. But so yeah, no, I never had a problem with him. I thought they used him appropriately.
I mean, I got nothing to add.
Right. So the last one of the major villains would be Toad, Ray Park. They'd already done the Star Wars prequel movie that he was in as Darth Maul. He'd already been overdubbed in that movie by another voice actor because they didn't like his voice. He does have a strong accent. Definitely had this guttural quality to it. There's moments like when he eats the bird that I think is just really stupid, but he's actually fairly effective in terms of the physical action. And given the limitations of Sabretooth, I think in retrospect, you kind of needed him because he's one of the only guys who's really able to do the physical stuff convincingly. And I could have done without the orange skin. I don't know what that has to do with being a Toad, but overall, I thought he was as good as a
and
Toad
his wicked tongue.
Yeah. But that CGI tongue was pretty fucking bad too.
Yeah.
This is one of those decisions in this movie. I just don't understand it. Why Toad? Why, of the entire gigantic cast of X-Men villains, do you pick Toad? I don't understand it. I understand why they picked Sabretooth. You know what I mean? I get it. They didn't do it. They didn't utilize him correctly. And Mystique, I understand, because from a movie's perspective, you can have her be your fucking, she can fill any plot hole you want. You can just use Mystique to do it. So that's very handy to have around. Why fucking Toad? Like, there's nothing cool about Toad at all. His powers are super lame. You're right. There's that one scene where he literally like kicks the entire X-Men's ass all by himself, and it's just like, what? But instead, the whole time
he's spitting some kind of goo at Jean and blinds her.
He fucking breathe and all that. Like, and I'm just like, wow, Toad just kicked all their ass. But at the same time, I'm having to think to myself, Toad just kicked their ass. Like, this guy's a joke in the comics, and you pick him, you pick Toad. Like, I just don't. And you're like, you're right. He's got orange skin. Like, this shit doesn't make any sense, dude. It was just really no. Like, he's just so dumb. Anytime he's on screen, I just can't stop thinking about how dumb he is and what a dumb character he is, and the fact that they could have just picked anybody for this movie and they picked him. Like, that's all. Like, I'm sure his performance was fine as a Toad, I guess.
I mean, let's be honest. Okay, so Magneto's group is supposed to be the Brotherhood, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so who's left to pick from besides the Blob? What was the guy that created Earthquake?
What was
there wasn't a whole lot of people left.
Was Sabretooth ever in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants?
No, not to my recollection.
It was Pyro.
No, he was part of another team.
Yeah,
he wasn't part of the Brotherhood.
But so that's my point. If they were just gonna pick random fucking, was Mystique in the Brotherhood or not?
Yeah, she had the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants that came out after Magneto stopped being a villain for a while.
Mystique, Pyro, Toad, Blob, maybe a couple others. Look, dude, that's fine. But you don't have to. You don't have to do, like, of all the shit you change in this movie, you're like, well, we gotta have Toad. We gotta keep Hannon because we gotta get Toad. No, you don't. You don't. And it's just like, and all he really is just excuse me, I'm choking. All he is just sort of like another physical character anyway, which Sabretooth should already kind of be doing. So I don't like all these characters just punch and hit stuff. So I don't really understand what the point was, other than he's just a hokey villain. And again, in my opinion, you don't want to go. You want to go as far away from Batman and Robin as you can. And to me, Toad is one of those hokey ass comic book characters that you're like, maybe we wait on Toad. Like, maybe we don't have the cachet to drop a Toad yet. There are way more like serious, kind of scary X-Men villains we could have used that are not Toad. So like, you could have had Pyro in the beginning. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Anyway, anytime he was on screen, I got mad.
I mean, I was very indifferent to him. I didn't care. I got that he was the mechanic, the pilot.
Was he?
I thought the guy that builds the machine. He's the one that's tinkering with the machine.
I totally totally missed that. If fucking Toad built the mutant machine, it's even dumber.
I mean, he's the one that's building it. He's the one that's flying a helicopter with Mystique and the Senator. I'm assuming he's supposed to be a tech guy. I mean, it would have been cool if he was like Forge or something. And he makes machines and he shoots at him. I mean, that would have been interesting. Make him a villain. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of weird. It didn't carry their way.
I still stand by. I think it's just a matter of they had a guy who could halfway act, who had the martial arts ability, so they knew they could do the practical stuff with him, and then they threw in the tongue because they had some money left over in the budget. But I think it was just a matter of it was a practical choice, and they didn't invest a lot into him. They let the guy, do his martial arts shit and swing his pole at one time and shit like that. So I guess the last major cast member to talk about is Bruce Davison as Senator Kelly. I'm sure that when we were seeing this movie back in 2000, we had no idea that he was going to be in all three of the first movie. And I think he does a really solid job of being a hate monger and then being a sympathetic character after he becomes afflicted by the mutant machine. And I think that it's really important that Mystique takes over that role at the end of the movie. It's strange how pivotal his character ends up being. He could have been a total MacGuffin, and he actually has a lot of shit to do in these movies.
No, I think he's good. I think he's kind of got a little of that slimebally politician snark down to him, and he's got that kind of cocky arrogance. And then you do kind of end up feeling bad for him by the end of it. You know what I mean? Like then there's the weird scene where he's just butt ass naked walking on the beach. That was really weird.
Well, what's funny is less of his butt showing because he has that merged ass as he's trying to reform.
Yeah,
he's kind of like a jellyfish, ain't he? Kind of translucent like a jellyfish.
Yeah, he definitely morphed into some sort of water fish. Like he had like gills, I think. Yeah.
Because I remember the scene where they show that kid in the water and he comes up for water and he's not really swimming. He's more like like an amoeba, just kind of wiggling in the water.
Where he's torturing the jellyfish.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought he was good, and I liked that he died. He's still active because Mystique takes over for him and stuff like that. Like I think that's I thought that was a really cool plot point that he actually perished in the first movie, but he continued on into the next film because Mystique basically is like, I'm a career politician. I'm like more permanently as a politician, and I'm going to use this platform now to fight for mutant rights and stuff. Like I thought that was a really, really good twist, and I don't know if that was intended to kind of carry through the other movies, and if it was, good for them. Bravo.
Well, and she ends up being a deciding vote on striking down the Mutant Registration Act. Mystique, once again, in a way, is more effective than anybody in getting shit done in these movies.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And in case I could not place the dude, he's a character actor who's just been in tons of shit for 40 odd years now. But one thing that I thought stood out when I was looking through his IMDb, he was in the Harry and the Hendersons TV show that spun out of the movie. He played George Henderson in the TV show. So I'm wondering if maybe Fix or Mac, either one of you guys ever watched
I was trying to remember what I've seen him in. At first I was like, wasn't he an Alf? But that's the other guy.
Mm-hmm. That Max dude, Max something.
Yeah. I was trying to remember. He's one of those guys where he pops up and he's always, some kind of slimy character or
he had a run on Seinfeld. He was on Next Generation. He's been all kinds of shit. You've seen him everywhere in the 90s programming. So I guess
same thing here. I just know he's a character actor. I don't remember. I was like, he's that guy from that thing. That's that guy from that thing.
Yeah.
So y'all all kind of touched on it, but any closing thoughts on your overall view of the first X-Men movie?
I thought we kind of all agreed it was okay, or some of us liked it a little more than others.
I wasn't as big of a fan of it. I had my complaints back in the 2000s. Watching it again, it's the only one of the three movies I fell asleep during while I was rewatching it. I did finish it. It's a product of its time. I think they did some things right, but I do think it's kind of slow, and I'm just not as invested in it as I am other X-Men movies. So I more tolerate it than really enjoy it. It's okay. It's not terrible or anything. If I had to rank it among like the MCU movies, it'd be toward the back end, along with, it'd be above like say Thor: The Dark World. I don't know how it'd fare against say Iron Man 3 or something. But
so what you're saying is you'll probably never watch it again
without there being the impetus of something like a podcast or something. I mean, I know I've seen it at least one time since the theatrical run, but I don't seek it out. I just don't feel a compulsion to watch it without a purpose, just for pure entertainment.
Okay, so I'm kind of in the similar vein here. Whenever I am not comparing it to a Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I sort of take it in its context, I'm like, man, this movie could have been really, really bad. Like, this movie could have been really bad. And there's a lot that's pretty good about it. But, they tried to make Anna Paquin the star of the movie, and she was not good. And Halle Berry's in a decent amount of the movie, and she's not good. And Sabretooth sucks, and Toad sucks. And the Mutant Machine is kind of lame. And so that's a lot not good going for it. And again, there are just some cheeseball moments here and there that I just feel like, they would have, like I said, a couple acting choices different and focusing on some different plot points, I think could have really, it it could have made me forget about the mutant machine and all that stuff, right? You know, like I think they were real close to this movie actually being pretty good, but at the end of the day, it's really just kind of so-so, and it's okay. And then when I compare it to any of the Marvel movies, like look, like I would compare it to something like a Thor: The Dark World or Iron Man 3, but you know, Iron Man 3 I hate, but at least it's got Robert Downey Jr. in it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's some, well, at least it's got so and so and so in it. Whereas as good as I think Hugh Jackman is in this movie, I don't think he's even close to Robert Downey Jr. in any of his Iron Man roles, as far as just stealing the show and being like, what, more Hugh Jackman on the screen? Like, I definitely wouldn't say that. I just think that compared to the rest of the cast, he seemed to have a little more compelling plot than everybody else. So I'm like, yeah, I don't, he's not annoying when he's on screen, and he's, yeah, cool. He's got some memory loss. Let's find out some more. That to me is a little more interesting than any of these other characters. So, yeah, when I put it in the MCU context, it hurts it quite a bit. But trying to just go back in time and be like, hey, let's remember this movie as it was in 2000, and I watch it, and again, it was not very long, and I've said it in all of our years of podcasting. If a movie's not long, I can really forgive a lot of stuff. So even the bad parts didn't last very long. So like I said, the movie runtime was just under 2 hours, which is fine, man. It even for its slow parts, it was still over quickly. So I can't shit on it too much for that. So I think it's a solid like C movie. I'm with you, Mr. Like what you said, I probably wouldn't go watch it again. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't like, oh my god, when is this movie gonna be over? Like I watched it through and it fine. So
I will only watch it again if I need to go to sleep.
Did you fall asleep too? Yeah.
Like Frank, this fucker put me down like 3 times. I had to go back and rewind because I would fall asleep. So you're correct. It's short and sweet and there's no fat, but damn, it is the ambient of the X-Men movie for me.
Ambient, you mean?
Ambient, there you go, ambient. Because I fell asleep. After the first half, I was like, okay, I'm into it. And at first I was like, am I tired because of work or am I just tired? And I fell asleep, woke up, rewind. I think the scene where Magneto, where Sabretooth dropped the Senator, I fell asleep again. And then I fell asleep near the end before. So this movie took me longer to watch than it should have. But if I need to ever get a nice, good, deep sleep, I'm throwing this bitch in there.
It's sometimes refreshing to see how straight they play these X-Men movies, but part of the refreshment perhaps is the nap. So, you know, playing it straight isn't necessarily the most exciting way to go.
You have to understand, we thought Bobby was going to a school for the gifted.
Bobby is gifted. You should see what he can do.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
Since the discovery of their existence, mutants have been regarded with fear, suspicion, often hatred.
Drop the knives and put your hands in the air.
I can't.
Are they the next link in the evolutionary chain? Or simply a new species of humanity, fighting for their share of the world?
What do you need, William? Just your authorization for a special operation, Mr. President.
We've managed to gather evidence of a mutant training facility
in the upstate New York.
This facility is a school.
Sure it is. Nobody really knows how many even exist, or how to find them, except you. Who are you?
I keep feeling something terrible is about to happen.
I would never let anything happen to you.
It's about to get very cold in here.
I need you to read my mind.
Sometimes the mind needs to discover things for itself.
They say you're the bad guy.
Is that what they say? What a talent you have, then.
Most people will never know anything beyond what they see.
I have faith in you.
The next time you feel like showing off, don't.
I used to think you were one of a kind, Wolverine. I was wrong.
So, Mr. Fixit, why don't you give us the 5-line synopsis of X2, X-Men United?
Okay, X-Men 2. So I'm trying not to get them all mixed up because I just watched 3 yesterday.
What would you feel more comfortable
2 starts off with
synopsizing?
Wolverine coming back. Well, hold on. Professor X had probed Wolverine's mind, sent them to, I guess, where Project X was, or Project whatever he was part of in Canada.
Alkali Lake.
There you go. Okay. So actually 2 was kind of one of my favorites because I do love the Nightcrawler. So Nightcrawler attacked the president in this amazing fucking scene where where he's running to the White House, teleporting left and right, throwing people left and right. He's about to stab the president. He gets shot in the arm. He drops a knife that screams, mutant freedom now. And it is portrayed now that because Magneto was captured in the last one, now in prison, there's this sense that Magneto is somehow controlling this mutant, I guess
revolution or
like grassroots movement on the outside, and they're now coming after government head figures. Wolverine's still trying to figure out who he is. Rogue's in love with Bobby, but they can't fuck because she'll kill him. We're introduced to Pyro. He's an asshole. So you want me to give you the synopsis of the whole movie or just...
Yeah, go faster. You need to go faster. You need to make bigger jumps.
Magneto gets free.
No,
I'm getting mixed up.
Take over, Diabolu Frank.
Yeah.
What's that?
You take over, asshole.
He's getting his movies confused.
Okay. Then you... I actually went to take a piss, so I don't know where you left off.
Oh my god! He was talking about like Bobby and Pyro and stuff, dude. Like, okay, so this one is what Stryker,
yes.
who was the head of the Weapon X
Brian
Brian Cox, who's great. He wants to use Cerebro to instead of detect all mutants.
He wants to kill the mutants because apparently through Cerebro you can either pinpoint, because they do the Professor X telling Wolverine you can pinpoint all the mutants or you can pinpoint all the humans.
And that's what he's trying to find.
He's trying to track down Nightcrawler to try to commit assassinate.
Well,
so the
simplest version is that Cerebro amplifies his psychic abilities, and if he concentrates hard, he can find just about anybody on the planet. If he concentrates too hard, he's going to kill that person. And if he concentrates really, really hard, he can kill a whole bunch of persons.
So Stryker has built his own Bizarro Cerebro.
Well, not yet. No, he hasn't.
No, the whole fucking movie. I'm telling you the whole fucking movie. Chill the fuck out. He built a Bizarro Cerebro, and his plan is to abduct Professor X and manipulate him using his son's mutant powers to focus on all the mutants on the planet and kill them all. That's the movie. By the end of it, Magneto gets out. He tries to do the twist and manipulate him into killing all humans. It gets broken up. X-Men win. That's X2. Ching, Snikt.
Best one.
So, Mr. Fixit, what you think X2? This is the best X-Men movie. Yeah, this is the best movie
of all of them, in my opinion.
Hey, so what's the plot synopsis? I can't remember.
Well, no, I mean, I was going to go through my favorite scenes. I mean, there's a lot of good scenes, and there's some really, like, I feel like this one, they went adult. Like, they're kind of like, the first one made a shitload of money. Y'all can get a little more, you finally have Wolverine killing people. Yeah. He's fucking stabbing soldiers.
For sure.
I mean, the first one, I hated the fact that he didn't stab anybody. This one, he's fucking going full Wolverine, murdering people. So they're finally killing people. I mean, I one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie is where Mystique fools the guard so she can get Magneto out of prison. And there's a scene when they kick in the door, the restroom door. I thought he said, "I've never hooked up with a hooker like you before."
Yeah.
And I had to go back, put in the subtitles to say where he actually says, "I've never hooked up with a girl like you before." But if you play it, it sounds like, "I've never hooked up with a hooker like you before."
I thought he said looker. I think
it might have been looker.
Maybe he said looker. I thought he said hooker, and I'm like, damn. Like, and then they're in the bathroom. He's like, "This is so dirty," and she's like, "I know." And I'm like, holy shit. And then
well, what's cool?
She injects. I mean, this one, they're actually killing people.
You got that shot in the bar where you're basically almost looking up her skirt. It's almost like they're doing Basic Instinct again with Rebecca Romaine, and you're like, geez, where'd that come from? That's some really vulgar cheesecake. And then you realize, then they slide over to the see-through transparent glass table, and you can see her drugging him in his glass, and it's like, oh, okay, that just like the guy's being distracted, the audience is being distracted. Yeah, and then she roofies him. I thought that was very clever. I think that you had a lot more capital D directing in this one, where, after, trying to just barrel through the first movie, you had a lot of visual stuff in this one where you could tell the guy was actually trying to shoot.
They definitely played with camera angles. Mm-hmm. In this one, there's a lot of cool angles with the camera when they're like looking at characters or the characters walking by. I mean, I can't talk. This is by far my favorite X-Men movie of all of them. All of them. I mean, Lady Deathstrike is fucking cool as shit in this one. I mean, I don't know. I really like this one. I don't know.
I want to go back to that bathroom scene, because not only does she takes him in the bathroom, and he's like, "Isn't this kind of dirty?" or something like that. She goes, "Isn't that the point?" or something like that. And then she sits him on the toilet, gets down on her knees, and then starts taking his belt off. And I'm like, how far are we going with this? Dude, yeah. And I was just like, whoa, this is going real far. This is going. I was like, holy shit, they're going for it. And then of course, he passes out and he ejects him.
And again, now I'm glad they did play up the fact that you needed to hate this guard because he's beating up, a prisoner. Because you have to realize when Magneto takes that iron out of his body, how fucking painful that was. That all his blood vessels are being, I'm assuming, exploding in his body as he's drawing all this iron out of his body.
Yeah. Oh, he's dead. He's very dead. He's got the super anemia.
I remember thinking that has to be a brutal way to die. Where it's just like all your vessels are just being just torn apart as his metal's being drawn out through your skin. And I mean, that was a cool ass scene where he creates the balls and he's just smashing shit. And I mean, I really enjoyed this.
Well, those little balls that he was having sitting around, it reminded me a little bit of Phantasm. And you can say what you will about Freddy and Jason, all of them, but there's something about this ball flying at high speed. There's not a goddamn thing you can do about this projectile. It's smart. It's going to chase you everywhere. And then once it fucking hits you, it's like a goddamn little killing cannonball. It's like the fucking shot they had back in the olden times where one shot would blow your entire fucking leg off. And it just annihilates all those guards, destroys his cell.
He murders them. You know they were hit multiple times with these fucking balls because they're just bouncing everywhere. He tears down his cage.
It's a moment of actual horror. That's a horror movie moment.
And they even play it up with even the music has this kind of like a very dark undertone. Like it's like, oh no, he's killing people now. Like the first time Magneto, then he would just turn your gun on you and that's it. Now he's like, oh no, I'm just fucking murdering people. Like that's what I'm saying. In this movie, he evolved from I'm gonna turn the guns around and this is a hostage situation to where he's just murder. By now he's especially because Brian Cox has been fucking him up that whole time. I love that.
They built it up. You're ready. It very much is like a sex scene. They built it up so much, and then when Wolverine's claws finally penetrate a human body, or when the brutal guard is just getting ripped to shit, and then all the other asshole guards are getting blown to pieces, you're like, yes. It's an emotional climax there, and it doesn't hurt. This is the only one of the three movies that's scored by John Ottman, who is a very much underappreciated composer. This is the same guy who scored Usual Suspect, and you can tell because the music builds up those emotional beats just like the visuals do.
I think that's like one of the better scenes in like. Wait, do we skip the scene? Or are we still talking about the scene? I know you moved into the score. Or were you talking about the whole movie? Man, I got all sorts of notes on this movie. So yeah, I thought that the Iron and the Blood scene was one of the cooler scenes in like any of these movies. Like that was so good, and especially because I'm an idiot and I was just sort of watching the movie. I just assumed Mystique had just stolen the dude's ID card, which is why when he walks in and at first their little security camera doesn't like approve him because it like scans your body, and I was like, oh, it's scanning him for. I was like, oh shit, they're gonna find out it's Mystique because I kind of forgot a lot about this movie. I remembered more about X1 than I remembered X2. Even though I remembered liking X2 for some reason, I remembered like nothing from it. So my dumbass was just like, oh, Mystique drugged him and took his security badge or whatever, and so she was gonna sneak in, and their cameras caught her, and then it lets her through. But then as he's walking, and it's like no metal detected, I was like, oh, I remember what's about to happen. Like, oh, that's what she was injecting him with. Anyway, yeah, that was all cool.
Well, and just to interject you, I don't know what it is with Bryan Singer or whoever does the production, because they had multiple people do production design across these movies. I don't know who it is who's into having a platform in the middle of empty space, because they do that like 3 times, but most effectively during that cage sequence. But you know what? I'm kind of a sucker for it each time. There's something kind of cool about this object in empty space, and then
floating there.
Yeah, like Cerebro, you've just got the platform, and then there's nothing but empty space all around it. With Magneto's cage, it's just hovering in the air, and there's nothing really around it. It's a weird visual parallels they keep doing throughout these movies.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like you said, I think the first movie was rushed. This movie is definitely a more mature. Like, okay, not only did we get more budget, we also got some legitimacy. So I'm gonna do my whole thing on this, and I think it shows throughout the movie. I will disagree with you. You said Lady Deathstrike was cool, and I don't know if we're gonna go back actor by actor later on. I thought she did a lot of standing around popping her fingers. Her fight scene with Logan was definitely cool, but until then, she's really just walking around. And if you know comic books, you know who that is. You're like, oh, you're waiting for some cool shit to happen. And in my opinion, it never really happens. Like she never has a cool shit scene until that scene where she fights Wolverine, which is really cool. And then the way he freaking kills her is injecting her with the adamantium and then dumping her in the thing, so she drowned. And she like clunks when she hits the dude. That's cool.
That is a cool scene whenever they're about to fight and he stabs her and he thinks he's got her, and then she jumps off and then she extends her fingers and he's like, oh shit, and then she just starts slashing at him.
That's what I'm saying. I thought the fight scene was good. Other than that, she was in the movie a lot before that, and she just did jack shit.
Well, when they showed her with Brian Cox, she kept popping her nails. I was like, okay, I know who she is. She's Lady Deathstrike. She has like some kind of adamantium in her hands, and I remember thinking, well, why is she following around like he wants to kill me? I think she was the whole thing where that scene where he's talking to Xavier about his son, and she's waking up and she starts to look around, and Xavier keeps looking at her, and Brian Cox is like, oh shit, I gotta put her back down. And then they show him like putting that shit on the back of her, and I'm thinking, oh shit, he just sees everyone like tools. Like mutants are just tools, and you gotta put them under control. And like I almost felt really bad for her because she probably didn't even feel, and I felt even worse for her. I liked her. I thought she was cool.
I think she would give you those blank stares, those zombie stares, and that she's just been completely subsumed by that chemical that they're injecting these people with, and you like you said, you feel bad because like she didn't ask for this. This isn't within her control, but she's so dangerous that they don't have any choice but to put her down because they can't.
Well, I mean, Brian Cox has that great line where he goes, "We thought you were the only one. You weren't kind of," where he basically says, "Oh, there's more like you. They're just different." So Wolverine is not this special claw popping healing. It turns out, no, there's more of them out there, and we found one, and we throw it. That was kind of cool.
Well, and to the blood, there's a lot of blood, especially in the first few movies.
Oh yeah,
and you just don't get to see that anymore. So it is a little bit jarring. It's like, damn, man, these people are really chopping into each other. You do get a visceral punch from that.
Colossus was cool as shit when they attacked the school. I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah, that was out of nowhere. Like, yeah, Colossus, cool.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Banshee screamed and like everyone is dropping. I really thought they killed her at first. When I saw it, I'm like, wait, did they shoot her? And then I realized, oh no, there is Trank. Because I do like the fact the president was like, I don't need what is it?
A dead mutant kids in the streets.
Yeah, on TV. And so Brian Cox just the perfect villain, dude. Just a perfect villain. I mean, his whole backstory, I was just like, I felt for him so much.
While still totally fucking hating him because he's such a fucking bastard.
Yeah, he's fucking horrible, dude. He's fucking terrible.
Yeah, but he was trying to heal his son, and his son. Now, was his son? What is that character? He was green skinned in the X-Men comic. They could create illusion.
I would have to look that up. I'm afraid.
There's a character. I believe he's green skinned. He used to create illusion, and I thought that was who he was supposed to be.
You talking about Mastermind?
I should have looked it up before.
You talking about Mastermind?
No. Mastermind wore a top hat with a fucking spinny shit on his hat. No, there was a character. Fuck, I'll have to look him up.
Mesmero.
Hold on, internet, save us. I got you right here. Hold on, give me 1 second. It says he was created by let's see, Ultimate Marvel. It says it was created by Chris Claremont. 1983 was his first comic book appearance. I guess his name in the comics is just Jason Stryker. I don't know if they ever give him a fucking. I don't know if they give him a. I'm sorry, I ground this shit to a halt because I thought I was right here at the answer, and instead, I don't know what.
More research.
I don't see where they give him a supervillain name or some shit or hero name.
Okay, because I thought that's who it was. I just thought that was the guy. The kid is torturing his parents to the point where his mom puts a drill to her temple to get the images out.
Well, that's what he says in the movie.
Yeah, in the movie. Okay, and I was just like, fuck, dude, that's brutal. So.
Yeah, this movie is far more PG-13 than X1 or whatever.
Today, it would be an R, I think. I don't think they could have got away with this
100%.
Yeah, it's a soft R, but it's definitely an R. From what I've been able to research on Jason Stryker, he appeared in the God That Loves Man Kills graphic novel, and they also made use out of him in the Ultimates universe. So it's a pretty specific usage, but since that graphic novel was so influential in X2, it makes sense that they would use that character. But I'll be honest with you, I never was a big fan of God Loves Man Kills. I thought it was kind of boring. I know that they were exploring very mature themes in a very mature time, but I think today it's kind of a pre-snooze, and I've never been a big fan of Brent Anderson working on stuff like X-Men. He's just not a good superhero artist, and I don't think he was chosen to be a good superhero artist, but it was one of those instances where in retrospect it's comic books taking themselves way more seriously than they need to. So I think that
I remember reading it as a kid and liking it a lot. I'd have to reread it now.
Great title, obviously. Definitely it lets you know, it announces its mature intention.
Yeah.
But just to continue on, like, there's just so much really adult image. Like, even at the end of the film, when Stryker, like, Magneto wraps him up in chains, and you just assume he killed him, but no, he actually left him there to die, dude. Because then, like, he stumbles across Wolverine again later or whatever. Like, that's like jacked up, where he's not crucified up there, but he's just like hanging up in the air, surrounded by these chains. And then
the scene where the soldiers are blocking the door and Magneto pulls the pin on all their grenades.
Oh yeah, dude.
Explode like dominoes, and you can see the flesh and the chunks of meat fly across with concrete. I remember thinking, and then you see all the rings drop next to Magneto's foot. And I'm just like, dude, that was fucking raw. Wow.
Well, and how about when they drop the hammer on Cyclops and Professor X, where he's doing one of his visitations to Magneto, and then they see the worm turning. Again, it's a horror moment when Xavier comes out of his chair and is grabbing at the door, trying to get loose, and he can't. All the stuff with the little girl manipulating him. Very strong horror overtones of that. There's actually a deleted scene where Xavier manages to make Jason remove his headgear, and then he uses telepathy to make the soldiers take him to Cyclops, and then him and Cyclops get into a helicopter, and they fly back to Westchester to the mansion, which is empty, and then you start seeing these little glimpses that they've tricked him the entire time. It's just a way of luring him into hit the Cerebro room without him even being known that he's being manipulated. So it's pretty cool. And Cyclops was being tortured when they found him. He had his arms behind his back and being pushed forward and shit. It's a lot of harsh imagery, I mean, just the simple fact that they had a raid on the school, the shades of Elian Gonzalez, and very much, the ice raids we've seen in recent years. Now that everybody has a camera on them all the time, you can see just how brutal these actions are. They're supposed to be nice. I remember my father was preaching during the Elian Gonzalez raid about how, no, look, you could see the soldiers didn't have their fingers on the trigger. And it's like they still burst into a child's house to take like an 11-year-old away and ship him back to fucking Cuba. I don't think that they cared whether or not the fingers were actually on the triggers or not. I think that, it was traumatic enough as it was. And there's nothing nothing that gets you against these guys as quickly as there's children asleep in their beds and they're going room to room shooting them with tranquilizers. As far as you know, that's hopefully all they're doing. It's really fucked up, and it's, this is reflecting, they always want to talk about, X-Men, it's the metaphor and all this kind of stuff. And we're living in times now where we don't need the X-Men to speak with the black experience. We probably need a movie with black people in it to speak to the black experience, but this speaks to a universal experience. When you watch a movie like X-Men, then you hear about some of the shit that goes on, particularly with ICE, you're like, fuck those guys. And there isn't a situation where that's not Gestapo bullshit, and it shouldn't be tolerated. And sometimes you maybe need to sneak it into a movie like this. That's an instance where you do need to sneak it in, because you might not hear somebody who wants to hear about immigration, but when you're shooting school children in their bed, all of a sudden it kind of hits you home a little bit more. Especially if you got your own kids, you're thinking about your kids being in their beds and these guys, these stormtroopers coming in, it kind of pisses you off. And, there's shit's going on in the world that you need to be pissed off about. So that's where I see value in a movie like this.
Well, and then the immediate reaction to them busting in is Wolverine's all like, it's time to go now, dude. And he absolutely brutalizes room to room and just starts wiping these dudes out. I mean, it's...
And he's putting his full claws into them.
Oh, 100, dude, yeah. They're not shying away from it. I mean, he is claws popped. He's not punching these guys. They're going, oh, like he's cutting these dudes up. And it is real. It's not Logan graphic, but it's like, it was far more graphic. Again, times, like a lot of the violence stuff has been normalized in 2020, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff I think has kind of been desensitized. Like what I was saying with Logan smoking in the first movie.
Resensitized.
Like, right.
Yeah, it's
Logan smoking in the first movie was like shocking. And then in this movie, when they're in the food court with Pyro and Iceman and Kitty, the kids are coming up trying to get a light from him because these kids are smoking in the mall and stuff like that. I'm just like, there's so much to this movie that you could not do, including, I think, Wolverine. I think that the stuff happened, the kids getting shot in the school, and then Wolverine running around and claw popping all these dudes in the exact same scene. I think some of that stuff would have been, from an upper level, been like, dude, we got to tame some of this stuff back. And this movie just had all of it.
Yeah, I thought it was strange that Xavier was so relaxed with freezing everyone in their place. Like,
at the museum.
That was weird.
When he froze, because I remember thinking, I'm sure the video cameras are recording all these people just standing still, and it's not moving, and you got to be wondering if the security guards are like, why isn't anybody moving? What's going on? But he was so relaxed. He was more upset with the kids, like, look what you made me do. I had to freeze everyone and erase their mind. And like, I remember thinking that was like really fucking weird. Like, he was too relaxed. I remember in the comics, he was always a big, I can't take control of people's bodies, and he was very big about not invading their mind. And this one, dude, he fucking froze an entire museum full of people like nothing.
In this movie and in Last Stand, Professor Xavier does some really questionable stuff, and it's on like the movie is making you question whether or not Professor X is a good guy. Yes, absolutely, dude.
Oh no, when he did that, I remember thinking, dude, that's such a violation. Like, these people have nothing to do with what's going on, and they're frozen. I remember just thinking that was so fucking weird.
Yeah, take responsibility for your highly powered students that you took out into a food court. Don't penalize these people. And like, look, he does. We find out in the next movie the stuff he's been doing to Jean. Like, I don't know. It's like, and I think we talked about this in our X-Men podcast a few months ago, that Professor Xavier has some sort of sketchy moments in the comic books, and I tip my cap to this movie really kind of hinting that maybe the dude ain't so clean. You know what I'm saying?
Not as innocent as he plays. Well, they kind of touched that on the other movies too, where he's kind of a little bit of a womanizer and uses his tricks to get chicks in the bed. But this one, there was definitely, there's scenes that stand out. You're just kind of questioning the whole X-Men universe a little bit. When they get stuck and they have to go to Iceman's house, and his parents are like, can you not be immune? Like, they really treat it like, what are you, like, is this a disease?
Very much in the night. I love that his younger brother calls the fucking cops on his own family. Yeah. That's some fucked up shit, but I absolutely believe that kind of shit happens, especially when you've got people that are not, that was the most clear, like, you could see Singer and the creators very much putting a lot of gay allegory into this particular movie, and it hit harder because you can tell they're coming at it from a personal place and maybe from personal experiences or shared experiences secondhand, and that gut punch of your own family betraying you and rejecting you, not outright in a cartoonish villainous manner, but like just as simple as, have you tried not being a mutant? And it's like, you fucking bit. No, I never thought that I would not want to, you totally get how emotionally
and then the mom goes, is it something I did? And then fucking Pyro's like, well, geneticists have found out that it's actually a father trait, so it's actually his fault. And he's just like, what an asshole, dude.
Yeah, who would have thought you'd be like on Pyro's side for a chunk of this movie, man? He's a dick, but sometimes he's the dick that you need. Aaron Stanford played the character, and I thought he did a great job with that. Great counterpoint to Iceman being the nice guy,
I thought he was a little punchable. I thought that was a good line, and I made a point of putting that line down. And I liked that they made.
Was the point.
He's supposed to be.
I know.
You're supposed to know that he's the guy who's going to do a mild heel turn, because he never in the movie itself turns against the X-Men, but he does ultimately join with the Brotherhood, and you knew that that kind of was always where he was supposed to be anyway. I thought they did a great job of setting that up without him ever having to actually outright betray the team. When he shows back up again in the third movie, he's just with the Brotherhood Brotherhood, and you don't have to talk about him betraying anybody or anything like that. It's like, no, he just switched sides because he went where he belonged.
Progression for him.
Exactly.
No, I know. I get it. And I definitely liked him better in this movie than the next movie when he turned in like a Fred Durst knockoff or whatever. Like he was very new metal. He's very new metal in the next movie. I'm just saying his punchability. I was like, man, that guy's really punchable. And then in the next movie, it just makes me affect this movie because I don't like him so much in the next movie, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, but this, he's in one of the best scenes in this movie too, is I love when Magneto and Mystique joins forces with the X-Men and they're in the Blackbird and they're just quietly fucking dishing on their asses and giggling about talking shit about them, and the X-Men want to kick their fucking asses because they're so pissed off because they know exactly what they're doing, and then they start befriending Pyro, and it's like, of course they're the cool kids, they're the fucking vicious queens of the school.
They're the mean girls.
Yeah, they're the mean girls, and yeah, of course Pyro's gonna want to fucking get it on that action. He wants to be one of the cool kids too. He's desperate. He's so thirsty to be the cool kid. Of course that shit's gonna work. It's a great scene and it's such a human moment while also being just fantastic cinema as well.
And real quick, Alan Cummings is fucking phenomenal as Kurt Wagner.
Well, I mean, the opening to X2 where he's going through the White House is still one of the best openings of any superhero movie. It's an extremely well choreographed action sequence, and then to have built up how scary this guy could be, and then have him become one of the sweetest people amongst the X-Men, one of the most innocent people among the X-Men, and also clearly one of the most tormented. Very affecting. And I'm fond of Alan Cummings anyway, and I understand he never wanted to come back because of how just unendurable the makeup job was, but he made an indelible impression in a fairly scant amount of screen time. He's not in the movie that much, but he's very memorable in those sequences.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good.
I love every time he introduces himself. He goes, in the Mutinic Circus, and everybody's like, shut up, we don't care, what's your name? And he has this whole like bravado kind of introduction of who he is, because he was in the circus. I mean, I love when they show the circus poster, when they catch him in the church. I was just like, oh, that's so Nightcrawler. Because Nightcrawler is kind of one of my favorite X-Men. He's just always been kind of cool. He looks cool. He acts cool. He has this, I love the fact that he's so like into his faith, even though, you know, they see him as a demon half the time when they see him. So I don't know. He was just really interesting.
There,
I really liked him in this movie.
Yeah. Well, he's a swashbuckler and he's a showman, and a lot of the X-Men are kind of, you know, flat people. You know, they're just like kind of, you know, it's cool to have somebody who's got a big personality like that, who has those dichotomies, who has those conflicts within himself, and you're getting to see that play out. Just very well done. It's a great character. Now, in terms of criticism, you know, this was the movie where Halle Berry just completely gives up with the accent, which is pretty pathetic. Famke Janssen has a few moments where her ability to play the duality of her, like, slowly beginning to manifest Phoenix doesn't really work that great. She comes across as a little ditzy at times, I thought. So I was huge on that. I do think that all the stuff with Iceman and Rogue in this one is much better than the stuff they had in the first movie, because they're playing students under siege, and I think that, you know, just suits better the type of movie that they're in. I think it's a truly great movie. I think it's one of the best of the superhero movies. It's definitely one of the best of the X-Men movies. It may be the best.
Oh, it is the best X-Men movie by far.
Well, you hesitated because you wanted to bring up Days of Future Past, and I would need to revisit that one as well.
No,
but I suspect
Future Past falls right behind it. But Future Past found they realized all the mistakes they made with the other ones and drew a lot on this one. We're darker. I mean, Wolverine wakes up and he's just fucked some chick in the bed, like the mob boss's daughter or some shit like that, and he's walking around naked. And I was like, okay, now they're going back to those. I'm sorry, go ahead.
My issue, the reason why I would hesitate, because obviously the special effects and just the scale and everything else is really cool about Days of Future Past, and it still deals with some of the same themes. But I just think that this movie isn't as busy, and it has much more time to in a sophisticated way, really explore these themes. And also, frankly, I just think that Days of Future Past is too fucking long, and the movie loses me at a point, and X2 never loses me. This is, again, like Mac was talking about with the first movie, it's all killer, no filler. There aren't any scenes I want to take out. Everything is there for a reason. Everything advances the story. Everything's advancing the characters. It's just a really great superhero movie and a really strong science fiction movie, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Plus Berserker Rage! Blur! That's what we're all waiting for, you know? So many people... Go ahead.
I mean, specifically, because I typed a note about it and I forgot to cover it. Like, when he's fighting those dudes and he stabs the dude in the chest with both of his sets of claws, and when he pulls the claws out, the dude drops and the claw marks are in the refrigerator. Like, that's what I'm like, okay, that's the extra step you take that is like, okay, this movie is as squarely adult.
Well, and
those little details, he's not just moving his arms around hacking people up. Like, they show you those claws went all the way through this dude's body and into the refrigerator, and it's like, oh man.
Well, and getting back to the resensitization, okay, like you watch a movie like Civil War where Cap and Bucky are fighting against the German police in riot gear, and I know they're not trying to hurt these guys, but there's no way that guys as powerful as them using the weapons that they're using are not doing some serious damage to these guys who are just trying to take down what they believe is a terrorist. You know, these guys aren't bad dudes. They're not bad actors. It's just a bad situation, and the heroes are exactly. They're everybody. Nobody's in the wrong here necessarily, except maybe Cap and Bucky more so than than the cops are. So when these guys are just getting tossed down halls and just smashed with rams and stuff, these guys are getting hurt really fucking bad. But it's cartoon violence because you never see the ramifications of that. And even though I don't know that you necessarily see as much on-screen violence in the Berserker portion of the school, the implication is clearly there that these motherfuckers are all fucking get killed. That, if you just take the camera around that corner that Wolverine just ran from, you're going to see something out of Faust. There's going to be body parts. There's going to be chunks of people lying all over the place. This is going to look like a fucking horror movie. And again, that's real violence with real consequence. And so while there is that cathartic value of, kill those motherfuckers, there's also the sense of these guys are fucking getting mauled. This is a fucked up situation. And it's good that these kids have mostly gotten out of the school. They don't need to see this shit because they wouldn't, psychologically, they'd be fucked if they saw what Wolverine's doing to these people. It makes you hyper conscious of the consequences of Wolverine's actions against these people while still kind of being on his side because you recognize that these people are worse than him and kind of deserve what they got coming to them.
Agreed. And but I just wanted, so when you were talking about things that were bad, Halle Berry is not as bad as X1 in this movie, but she's still not any good. And it was, I still don't know. She's in some really dumb scenes. She's when they're flying in the Blackbird and they blow up 2 American fighter jets. I'm like, that is a little high profile. Okay. You can't blow up over the United States 2 aircraft and just, we just laughed that off. It's no, people would have watched these jets explode. These are military jets. So I love it. And then what is it? When the Blackbird goes to crash and it's crashing and it literally crashes into Magneto and he catches it. And I'm like, that is such a ridiculous coincidence.
No kidding. No way in hell. That's so stupid. Yeah.
Well, I did like the scene where the missile hit the Blackbird and Rogue gets sucked out.
And Nightcrawler
that was
cool.
Yeah, and then Nightcrawler teleports back in. I was like, dude, that was pretty damn cool.
Definitely cool. But to literally needle in a haystack, freaking falls straight at Magneto, and it's just what? How did these people know this was gonna they're moving at Mach 5? What the hell?
I did like the fact that fucking when they did catch up to him, that Mystique was fucking with Wolverine when she's kissing him in the tent.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was weird,
dude. And she turns into Jean, and she turns into Rogue.
Yep, sure enough.
And I'm like, oh
yeah, and he's like, oh, get out of here, you old scamp or something like it. I was like, man, he should have been a lot more upset about that than he was.
That's not consent. So it gets into some really weird Me Too areas because it's not supposed to be. I'm not supposed to know Logan is the one who's not the harasser for once. That's weird,
right? But yeah, I thought Mystique was good again in this movie. I thought all the returning characters were really good, except for I don't know the ones that were not. That we don't need to harp on again. But and I thought that Stryker was fantastic, and I thought the plot. This was no mutant machine. This one was way cooler. That it was his chopped up, experimented on son that he was using to trick Professor X into it just worked. I don't know. It worked for me. It was, and he was building the shadow version of
and the dehumanization.
Cerebro, and how does he get the plans? It's because he's manipulating Eric, and you can tell even he was like, I sold them out. I did he doesn't, as bad as Magneto is, he doesn't want anything to happen to the school. He doesn't want anything to happen to Professor X per se, and he knows that he uncontrollably just sold them all out. And because they were like, how did he build Cerebro? And he was just like, because I told him. I'm sorry. It's a lot of really good moments and layers to the plot that made sort of the ridiculousness of it feel okay, and it was all right.
Stryker's kid, I can't remember what happened to his kid.
He got buried when the base started to collapse.
Did it?
Correctly,
okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
I was sitting there because I remember they rescued Professor X because that's when Magneto has Mystique turned into Stryker, which I was like, oh, that's so fucked up. And he's like, now stop looking for the mutant, look for all the people, find all the people. And I was just like, oh, that's so fucked up. And I mean, Mystique had that great scene where when she sneaks into the base and she's jumping around and she slides between as the doors are closing and she's flipping them off.
Yeah,
that was weird.
So much
cool. I like that. I thought that was cool.
No, I love it too.
And then the scene where she walks up to that I guess the communication station as Brian Cox, and he's barking orders, and all of a sudden she strikes one guy with the gun and knocks out the other guy. And as Brian Cox in there walking up, she looks down and kind of waves and gives him a kiss. Just dude, she's so fucking manipulative. She golds you in the fuck to come after her and make more and more mistakes to the point where he tells the soldiers, don't let anyone come to this door, even if it's me, you shoot them dead.
Yeah, shoot them dead even if it's me. Yeah, that was a great line. That was a great line. It's because she is fucking with everybody in these movies. She's good.
It's to the point where she pulls that into you. She golds you to go that far that if you see me, kill me because you don't know if it's me or not.
And even the people watching the movie, you're sort of like, whoa, is that Mystique or is that not Mystique? They do it enough that you're like, I don't even know. This could be. They got me so many times. They got me a few times. So you start to not believe in it, which is, I think, an appropriate use of that character. They did a great job.
Yeah.
But also the dehumanization, the fact that Stryker does not see the mutants as being fully human to the point where he actually eventually turns them into automatons that then complete to his will as he stabs them in the neck with the fucking syringes and shit. It's fucked up imagery, and it's shit that you just have a gut level repulsion to. And you're meant to reject the mindset of Stryker. You're meant to reject that kind of, especially when you see a bunch of the fucked up shit the X-Men do and all the shit they blow up and Xavier abusing his powers and stuff. It'd be easy to turn on them, but then when you see the other side going far worse, far lower, doing much nastier shit, then you're kind of back on the X-Men side again.
Agreed. So this movie, very good, holds up really, really well. Was easily the best of the three. I don't think any of us are going to complain.
It's probably the best of the 12, 13 movies total that they ever did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I would say that. Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I've seen it recently enough. I prefer the Logan too. I enjoy Logan as well. I looked at a lot of top X-Men ranking movie lists on YouTube, especially after Dark Phoenix came out, to see where these movies came in. And X2 topped some of the lists, but oft times it was getting pushed down by Logan, or even even far more questionable ones sometimes. And I just don't see how you watch X2 and not come away with this being the best of the movies in terms of just story, in terms of acting. There's so much about this movie that's it deserves to be as well regarded as it was at the time and to this day.
I really like Logan. I do think it was a little oversold when it came out. It was one of those where we got a groundswell of people trying to get, why wasn't it nominated for an Academy Award? It's like, all right, let's chill a little bit. But it was so dark and brutal and everything that I was still taken aback by some of it. Some of the story elements were really dumb. But and I thought Patrick Stewart's fantastic in Logan.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, again, like I said, that's my jump. I saw the first three and then Logan, and I like Logan. So I don't is it better than X2? Probably not. But anyway, but I don't know. Comparing this to like Marvel movies, this one I think you could solidly start throwing up in there as being like, yeah, okay. This one is like, I would watch X2 again, like for real.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem watching this movie again.
I would watch it again.
So maybe let's see how we feel about the next and supposedly final movie in the series, X-Men: The Last Stand. Wait. Sorry, I had one more thing to point out. Hold on. Let me just scroll through my notes real quick to make sure. Okay, I forgot Jean died in that movie though. I completely forgot about it. Well, we're going to address that pretty thoroughly in the next one anyway. So
yeah. Professor X popping in while the president was doing his speech.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. That was a great finale because again, you get to see the X-Men being scary, being like, maybe I need to be worried about fucking people. They did a great job of that, but at the same time, because of the actions of his administration, you could see why they would need to employ that intimidation factor.
Another reason why this movie is good, and we just accidentally proved it, we did not mention Anna Paquin once in our entire discussion of X2, and it's because she basically gone, and I don't think that the movie suffers at all from that. And then finally, did you know Jason 143, which is Jason Stryker, Michael Reed McKay is his name, and do you know what his first theatrical role was?
Star Trek.
No, he was the movie Mummy in the Monster Squad.
Oh, really?
He's a skinny dude. I guess that makes sense.
He plays a lot of sort of weirdly skinny roles.
Kind of like Doug Jones.
Sure. And then he was also the sloth victim in Seven. That one popped up. I was like, oh, that was a rough. Anyway, I saw Mummy for Monster Squad at the bottom of IMDb and I freaked out. So anyway, I had to throw it in there.
On principle, I can't negotiate with these people.
Well, then you know what needs to be done.
We're going to protect our citizens.
Make no mistake, my brothers. The humans will draw first blood. And the air is still, and the night has fallen. Has anyone questioned you must answer? Who will you stand with?
A major pharmaceutical company has developed a way to suppress the mutant X gene permanently. They're calling it a cure.
There's nothing to cure. Nothing's wrong with any of us for that matter.
You of all people know how fast the weather can change.
Did you find what you were looking for?
The source of the cure is a mutant. More powerful than you.
Jeez, something woke her. But she has to be controlled.
You know, sometimes when you cage the beast, I can't do this. The beast gets angry.
You have no idea what is upon us now.
Fury that this world has never witnessed.
Magneto's got an army out there. You go to war, you might not come home. She might not come home. You ready for that? We're not kids anymore. Hey, I'm not your father. If you want to go, be sure it's what you want.
It's time we make our choice. If you're with us, then be with us.
They wish to cure us. And I say we are the cure.
Look at me, G. We can help you. We can fix it. We can make it like it was. Stay with me, please.
All right, let's move on to whatever. What's next?
The Last Stand.
Right?
A good place to need to end the podcast on this one right here. Fixit, since you aborted last time, you want to give another shot at finish this one out?
Oh, you mean this fucking dumpster fire of a film?
Wait. Can I just set
directed by The Rat?
But before we go too far, I only want to briefly talk about this movie, the actual plot and acting and stuff like that. I'd rather talk more about
because I don't remember it.
I want to talk more. I want to talk more about like the production and how weird that was to wrap this up, because I think that's way more interesting with this movie than
okay, wait, we can do that before we get to the plot. Go ahead and talk about that stuff.
Okay, so because I was going to riff off the plot. Like the plot is this weird, like middle of the road. Are you setting this movie up? So you kill Jean, Scott, Professor X. You take Magneto's power away, right? So it's sometimes trying to act like it's ending the trilogy, and then on the other hand, they're acting like, no, we're getting rid of some of the old players and the contracts are up. So now Kitty, because they seem to kind of push off. Rogue was a little more in this one than X2, but it seemed like now we got this Kitty, Bobby, Rogue love triangle, and they talked about how Storm was going to be taking over, the X-Men, and so it's like I couldn't tell. Are you trying to roll this to the next generation of X-Men movies, or were you trying to end the franchise? And they couldn't. It's like they couldn't figure out what the fuck they were trying to do. And then at the very end of the movie, the stinger is Magneto moving the chess piece. And it's like, okay, so what did you make this for? Are they coming back? Or are they not?
You're getting the final stinger.
Was there a
Professor X appears in some body?
Oh, right. From earlier in the movie, he talked about things that he would do that you shouldn't do, and that's like, well, what if you took the consciousness of somebody who was dying of cancer and put them in a and then they even showed Moria McTaggart with that guy, and then the stinger. You're right, and then suddenly he's back, and I'm like, what were you trying to do? Are you trying to end the trilogy or not end the trilogy? Like, I don't like. It seemed like nobody had a fucking clue what they were trying to do with this movie, and I think it absolutely shows. It's kind of a mess. I don't know. I don't know.
I agree 100%.
I don't know if Diabolu Frank got into any of those details or what exactly was going on, but the Wikipedia for it is a little interesting.
One thing we may want to discuss too is the problematic nature of these directors too, because you got two movies that are filmed by an acclaimed director that also turned out to be like an ephebophiliac serial predator, which has derailed his career. He's been sued in the past by alleged underage lovers of his, which may or may not have been a situation of statutory rape, and that's why he stopped making X-Men movies, because they weren't going to associate with him anymore. And then Brett Ratner, he's the guy who comes in to replace him, and Brett Ratner, beyond movies like Rush Hour, is probably best known for masturbating with Shrimp Cocktail to Olivia Munn against her will. He's also not involved with movies very much anymore because of his long history of sexual harassment. No, he's actually done rape stuff too, from what I understand, or at least some alleged rape stuff. So what the fuck is it with the X-Men movies and these fucked up problematic directors? I don't know, but it definitely, I think it's going to hurt the legacy of these movies, knowing that the men behind making them are so fucked up. At the same time, I don't think if Bryan Singer weren't a gay man, you'd have gotten him, he wouldn't have gotten Ian McKellen to be in Apt Pupil or in X-Men, because it wouldn't have been necessarily on anybody else's radar. And he made a point of putting gay themes and gay actors into these movies and supporting them, and also giving a gay perspective to these movies, which I think was very valuable. So it's just one of these things where, can you divorce the artist from the art, and how much is that really a Bryan Singer thing anyway? How much of that is the collaborative process of motion pictures? At one point in commentaries, Ian McKellen pointed out that the best thing that Bryan Singer brought to the movies was taste, that he basically knew where the line was, where you could do some of the fantastic stuff, but he also wanted to make sure it was classy and accessible to mainstream audiences, and not be garish or gauche or anything. Obviously, I think that there's value to Bryan Singer, and I think that the fact that he's coming off of movies that were claimed as a usual suspect, that gave this movie these series a cachet that wouldn't have had otherwise. That they gave them respectability. It gave them a prestige that they wouldn't have had necessarily without him. So, how much can you divorce the artist from the art? And really, given that these are superhero movies, how much of this is commerce and even falls under the purview of art. These movies bring up a lot of questions based on the people who are associated with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely weird, but I still think there's a lot of weird stuff around the production of this movie. It has nothing to do with the bizarre sexual crimes and or accusations of the people involved. I mean, it was so the whole reason that Singer didn't do this movie, right, was because he went and did Superman Return, right? And he took the entire squad with him. So the entire crew that did X2 went with him to go do Superman, so apparently his original script for this movie was that it was going to focus on the resurrection of Jean Grey and that Emma Frost was going to be introduced. Sigourney Weaver was supposed to play Emma Frost, the White Queen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she was going to be manipulating Jean when she came back and making her all jacked up and shit like that. So it was going to be this Emma Frost, Magneto, Jean Grey focus of the plot. And then in the end, she dies and becomes, a godlike creature or whatever, ascends to whatever, like she did a million fucking times in actual comic books. That's the way it was supposed to go down. And which I think probably is about a million times better than we actually got, because we kind of got that. Like, you can see where they took some of those ideas for this, because I guess she was dead and they had to bring her back. But you can just, I'll take it. And what sucks is that Superman Returns sucked, right?
God, it's so horrible. Fucking boring.
It was terrible. And what a freaking shame is it we got Superman Returns and didn't get X3 with Singer, because I think he could have played off X2 with a bigger budget and really knocked it out of the park and wrapped it up as a sort of trilogy, because that definitely sounds like more of a closure to a trilogy. Mm-hmm. Other than this freaking wet noodle we don't know we get with what's his name?
Brett Ratner.
Reading that made me even more kind of pissed off that this movie exists. I don't know. So just weird stuff like that. And then what's weird is, Singer comes back and they talk to all these people who were going to do it or were going to do it. All of them are just like, yeah, the dude's back was kind of up against the wall, so he kind of did what he could do with it. But yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I would have done this differently. And I think everybody pretty much agrees the movie didn't turn out the way it probably should have turned out. And they really fumbled the ball on it.
That was another one that had a date well in advance. You've got to hit this date. And they had, it had already been partially developed by Matthew Vaughn before he left, because he had apparently some family issues. And also he didn't feel like he could make a good movie with the date that they gave him. Brett Ratner's a guy who is known for, mid-budget comedy dramas. Listening to the commentary track, he obviously desperately wanted to please the fans. He tried very hard to keep up the visual aesthetic and tone of the previous movies. He apparently read a lot of comics trying to get up-to-date speed on it, and he relied very heavily on the writers, Simon Kinberg and Zach Penn. At one point, he pointed out that he asked them to put some sort of Easter egg for the comic fans into every single scene that they shot, and he had the writers on set throughout, so they were probably tweaking shit the entire time. Now, some of that might have been bullshit. It might have been him just trying to ingratiate himself to the fans. He seems like he might be the type. His stated intent seemed like he really wanted to try to please the fans, and he did the best job he could under the circumstances to do that. While clearly this is a movie that time has not been kind to, it was not warmly received in the first place, and it's become a bit of a punchline of the year since. But I do think that there was some intent there that maybe wasn't seen all the way through.
Yeah, but like I said, I just couldn't believe that, because obviously back then trilogies were like the thing, right? You do 3, it's a trilogy. Nobody would ever be like, we got to make 15 movies. We got to have a huge cinematic universe. So I get the finality tones of this movie. That makes sense to me, because I'm like, okay, it's the 3rd movie. I'm sure a bunch of these contracts, these guys signed 3 movie deals, whatever. That makes sense. I just couldn't understand what. It's so weird throughout the movie where I'm like, are you setting them up to be the new X-Men? And Storm's taking over the team. But then at the same time, it's like, no, this is the movie's like over. Like the trilogy's over. And I'm like, what? It just makes no sense to me. It's very frustrating to watch, because I can't figure out what tone they're going for.
Well, you want to just offer a very slim retrospective of what this movie, like the synopsis, because we're talking around the story without actually telling the story. And there may be people that abandon X-Men or just know this movie by reputation and never bothered to see it. Like, what's the short version of the plot?
Okay, so Jean Grey comes back from the dead, is weirdly not Jean Grey. Professor X explains that it's because he put all these mental blocks in her head, and that she's actually like the most powerful mutant of all. On the other side of it, Magneto realizes that Jean is back too, so it's kind of turns back to this old rat race they used to have, where Professor X and Magneto both going after the same mutant, trying to figure out who can win them over. At the same time, the government has discovered Warren Washington II, Angel's father, has discovered, is it Leech? Is that who he's supposed to be, the mutant or whatever?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. His found ways to weirdly synthesize that dude.
I'm so used to Leech being like this weird creature, like he's a really jacked up looking mutant. And so they get the kid from Ultraviolet and Birth. He was like the official child actors of like 2005 through 2007. And so he's in all this shit. He's in the Twilight movies, and it's like he's just so weirdly like they shave his head, so they try to make him look a little bit abnormal, but he just like looks so terrifically normal that you're like, but he's what? Huh? It's just like it's weird for him to be that character. But it's not like he's in it very much either.
Yeah, that's fine. So anyway, they find a way to like synthesize that dude's power to basically cure quote unquote the X-Men or the mutant gene. So basically they've got, we got a vaccine now. So you've got this fight between whether or not there's anything to be cured of. And the X-Men are all like, no, you should embrace being a mutant. And, and then at the same time, it's the same way with Magneto, where he doesn't want people going around curing mutants either because he thinks they're the superior race or whatever. So but Jean Grey is sort of like hanging over the movie weirdly. Like everything I just said has got nothing to do with Jean Grey returning as Dark Phoenix, right? And it continues to not have anything to do with her throughout the rest of the movie. So, what do you call it? In the movie, it's all them just trying to race to get to the stuff. And so, what was Magneto's India missing? What his whole plan was to get? Was it just to kill Leech? Was that what he was trying to do?
Essentially, what it was, everybody goes to the Golden Gate Bridge, and Magneto uses that bridge to get his mutants to Alcatraz Island, where the Warrington labs are located, where Leech and the vaccine against mutantism, Alcatraz Island, and so they kill the kid, they blow up the lab, and then you're done with the neutralizing agent. What I remember most though about that bridge scene is that when they were pushing high definition TVs back in the mid 2000s, it seemed like that sequence was always playing on repeat at like Best Buys and shit as a way of trying to convince you to buy Blu-ray and high def. And I remember how fucking fake that shit looked, how staged that looked, and it convinced me to not have anything to do with it. Now I'm sure a lot of that had to do with like the progressive scan or the progressive smoothing, the settings on the TVs and stuff, but it looked terrible, and it helped to convince me to not have anything to do with high def.
Oh yeah, well, and to make it worse, they couldn't go to San Francisco to shoot any of these scenes. Like there's that scene with like Magneto and Juggernaut, and they're all like standing looking at the Golden Gate Bridge, and they're just obviously in front of a green screen with a fan blowing on them to make his cape move around. And I'm like, you couldn't go to San Francisco. Like, we have CGI. Like, it doesn't even, like, anyway, when stuff like that, it's like, dude, come on. I know you had a budget. You couldn't fly 3 actors and a camera crew out to San Francisco to put on a freaking suit and just look out over at the bridge at 7 o'clock in the evening. Like, give me a break, dude. Because it looks so bad. Like, that's before he even starts horribly moving the bridge around, which is absurd. But, I mean, like, come on, dude. You can't power a mutant machine, but you can pick up the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, give me a break. So, yeah. This is where you got to the tail end of that gray area where you were using no practical effects and you thought the CGI looked good, and it actually didn't.
That's not true. That there was actually, again, Ratner made a point of filming as much as possible with practical because they didn't know they were going to have the budget to do the CGI, and maybe that was the problem, is that on the back end they didn't have the budget to do the CGI, or they didn't have the time to do it well. So
okay, yeah, no, I think that still proves my point that like the CGI was still not good enough for using it, and that was a huge scene to use a bunch of CGI, and it looked terrible.
They could have benefited from some miniatures there, yeah.
So that was basically the plot. Okay. So whatever. Doesn't Magneto gets okay? So to finish off the plot, Phoenix at the very, very end, she goes like buck wild, and then she just like blows up all the shit. Isn't that what happens? And then she dies. What happens?
Well, basically, she's just standing around letting everything play out without participating. And deleted scene, Magneto's like, "Can you help us out here?" And she's like, "Nah." And then they're like, "Okay, well, fuck, we're gonna work it out without you." Then once everybody's like dead or neutralized or run away or whatever, that's when she decides that she's going to participate and just starts killing tons of soldiers for no particular reason, because everything she does in this movie essentially is for no particular reason. And then that's when Wolverine has to try to get through her telekinetic powers, getting his skin ripped up, and like to got killed a bunch of times, but she lets him get close because twice in the movie she asks to be killed so she doesn't do the shit she ends up doing, and Wolverine finally obliges her. And then she's dead, and then other stuff happens. There's actually multiple alternate endings and alternate variations. It's hard to remember what actually does happen, but mostly with Xavier dead, Storm becomes headmistress of the school, and they reopen the school, and because of they're no longer having to debate whether or not it's okay to neutralize mutants' powers, I guess because the kid Leech ends up going to the Xavier school, which I don't know why that would be the case, because various mutants do get their powers neutralized by choice. They just basically, everybody goes up the school and is happy, and we don't address any of the ethical issues that are brought up throughout the movie. They never address any of that shit. Everybody hangs out at the school and is happy ever after. And at least
and Bobby comes into the room and finds Rogue, and she's all like, "I had to, I'm sorry." Like, she cured herself. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what? Like, that's a pretty big bomb to drop at the very end, and just like never addressed ever again in any of these movies.
And again, the entire movie, Rogue's appearances in the movie is her standing at a window or her standing in the distance, seeing the increasing closeness between Bobby and Kitty Pryde, as played by Ellen Page. Eventually she runs off because she realizes that she's losing her boyfriend, and so she goes and stands in a line, gets her powers taken away, and then comes back to school. But that's literally like 5 scenes, and she's in it for like a shot in each of those scenes because she's just constantly seeing that happen, and then decides to go get her powers knocked out. The end. You know, I think there's one scene with her, a couple of scenes with her and Wolverine talking about the choice he's making, but total screen time 90 seconds, 2.5 minutes, maybe. You know, and across the entire movie, just these little tiny snippets of her. And they actually did film a version where she keeps her powers, but the producers were like, "Why did we tease us out for the entire entire movie, then she keeps your power. So there's actually a version film where she still got their gloves on, and it's the exact same scene otherwise.
And that's still more than she was in X2. Whatever. Okay, so I have like random notes. Can I just run through my random notes real quick?
Sure.
Because I feel like this movie is Okay, theatrically, I absolutely hated this movie. So I was really curious. Like this movie is why I never saw any of the other ones. That's how bad I hated it. And watching it again, I will say it's not quite as bad as I remembered. It was definitely not good at all, and solidly worse than X1. But although it had some weird moments. But anyway, like weird moments that I kind of liked. So let's run through some of them. Let's go. Let me see. I thought when they de-aged Xavier and Magneto, they didn't really de-age them, but they just put a little extra makeup on them. I thought they looked pretty good. I like that scene.
That actually was CGI.
Was it? I thought it looked good.
They used some of the same techniques I think that they used on Clint Eastwood for In the Line of Fire to de-age him. And yeah, I thought they did a nice job with that.
I thought when Angel's in the bathroom, like cheese grating his wings off.
Oh, that was brutal. Yeah,
was freaking gruesome. And in these movies, they really like double down on parents like disgust at their own children, which I think is a weird choice to make.
It's important to clarify. We see him as a pubescent boy or immediately pubescent boy. So it's not like he's grown ass, in the bathroom. It's like, no, this was years ago. It was a decade prior.
When Logan and Cyclops have their little spat before he runs off, and he tells Logan, not everybody can heal as fast as you can, like insinuating he's already over Jean being gone. I thought that was a good touch. Well, and I think it would have been better.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Go ahead and tell us a little better though first.
But I think it would have been a little better if they would have spent more time on the love triangle.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think that's a great line that Wolverine's already like, I'm over it, man. Oh, that sucked. Whereas she was really the love of his life, and he lost her. And I'm like, shit, that's a good line that we really lost out on because they didn't explore that triangle enough.
What's especially when you watch the three movies in rapid succession, you realize there's like maybe a month between the first and second movie. Maybe, okay? Might be a matter of weeks. Everybody's hairstyles changed randomly, but otherwise it's been this really short amount of time. And of course, that time is Wolverine on his own going up to Canada trying to find the Weapon X project. So there's been no additional bonding between him and the members of the X-Men. There's been very little time for any of those characters to bond. I mean, Rogue's managed to pull a boyfriend even though she can't like physically touch him, but that's already happened. And then you got to figure the death of Jean. That's maybe, I mean, for starters, how is she in a telekinetic bubble for any real long period of time anyway? Although her hair grows out substantially from one movie to the next. But you know that it hasn't been years. You're talking about maybe weeks or months between 2 and 3 too. So there's way too much familiarity, especially with regards to Wolverine and Jean, because at the end of X2, he's like all having to stop himself from crying. He's doing that little like puff thing with his mouth, like he's about to bust out with tears. He's known her a matter of days. And there was a month in between where he wasn't seeing her ass, and he's supposed to be crying over her. And yeah, of course, a person that's, there's nothing for Wolverine to heal from. He barely knows this person. So they needed to allow, I sometimes get frustrated with the Marvel movies because I felt like they allowed too much time to last between movies. Like you have a movie and then years have passed before you pick them back up again. But at least you get this an awareness of the deepening of the relationship between those characters. Where with these movies, they take place over a 6-year span, but it's literally like less than, I think it's maybe like 3 months between the three movies total span. So those relationships don't make sense in that time frame, and it's very frustrating because the triangle should be an affecting moment with her dying and everything else too, but maybe that's not really made for a trilogy. You almost feel like they need 4, 5, 6 movies to get to a place where they could tell that story, and they just tried to rush it too much.
Agreed. Let me continue on here. Mystique, did she at one point, did I hear this wrong, where she says somebody calls her Raven or whatever, and she says, I don't answer to my slave name?
Yeah, I love that line.
Is that what she says?
Yes.
Good Lord. And then also, like the next scene when she's in captivity, she turns into that little girl and tells that guard, when I get out of here, I'm going to kill you first. Like she's like super creepy in these movies. Even when she's just like, I don't know what it is about Rebecca Romijn's face, but in the blue paint with the green eyes, when she's just sort of like looking and smirking at you. And I think Mr. Fixit mentioned this for the first movie. She's got this like weird kind of creepy serial killer look to her that is like, she's thinking about doing some weird shit right now. And probably you get a little fractured when all you're doing is acting as somebody else all the time. Let me see what else here.
There was a deleted scene where the guard tells her, shut the fuck up or I'm going to mace you, bitch. And I wish they'd kept that in the main version. It was a good little line.
God, I think he dropped bitch on her or something. Okay, anyway, this is another example where this movie is just, these movies go in just like fast forward all of a sudden where Scott throws a hissy fit, gets on his bike, rides out to Alkali Lake, gets mad, shoots the water, Jean Grey's back, she kisses and kills him, then immediately Professor X senses something's weird, tells Wolverine and Storm that they need to go to Alkali Lake, and boom, they're at Alkali Lake. And I'm like, dude, that is a minute and a half. Like, that was a minute and a half of this fucking movie, and it is just like, and then the
I remember sitting,
there's actually 0 mourning of Scott's death.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, nobody liked that guy. But yeah, I remember sitting in that movie with Pussycat and Fixit, and I was confident all three of us were like, there's no way Cyclops is actually dead. They're going to have to address this. They're going to have to flash back to this. And then, you're almost at the end of the movie, you're like, okay, I guess Cyclops really is fucking dead. Because I think part of the reason why it doesn't have any impact is because you don't believe it, because you're not going to kill Cyclops in the first few minutes off screen, and then they did.
Wait, hold on. I could have sworn there's a reason why he's out of the movie so quick, right?
He was doing the Superman movie.
He went to go do Superman with Singer. Yeah,
he was Perry White's nephew.
I think, if I read correctly, he only came by for like a few days to shoot these scenes and then left.
And of course, they're pissed at him for leaving, so they kill his ass off. You know.
Okay, so then Logan's hair is terrible in this movie. It's like super teased up. I think it's fake. I would like to see an entire Wikipedia about Logan's weird Wolverine hair in this movie. I don't know why it looked the worst of the three. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe Hugh Jackman had it cut for a different movie and they had to just do a bunch of fake like spray on hair, but it looked really bad. It was super teased up. Looks really weird. Let me see. They get to Jean Grey. They talk about Professor X restoring memory blocks and he creates multiple personalities. Wolverine gets pissed and it's just like immediately he's all of a sudden questioning what Professor X says. Professor X says, well, I got to do this. Like that was a huge moment where you're making Professor X be a terrible person and there's no explanation on it other than like you kind of need to deal with it because I'm Professor X and I know what's good for people. And then boom, the movie moves on. And I'm like, bro, you got to slow down. Can we simmer on that one for a second and sort of explain the ramifications of what Wolverine's accusing you of or what's going through Wolverine's mind? No, we're not gonna. Okay, I guess we're moving.
Well, and especially because Xavier's like, you of all people can't question me. It's like, bitch, you know? It's like, have you not seen what I've been doing to Cyclops for 2 fucking movies? I have all the time in the world to talk shit to you, Xavier. But yeah, but at the end, he is vindicated because Jean fucks all kinds of shit up. So it's not like Xavier was wrong, apparently, to put those blocks in place because she's a fucking straight psycho.
Yeah, and I think it's really close after that he's got like hand on her. She wakes up. She tries to fuck him. Like it's just like crazy fast all the time. Storm finally gets another move that isn't staring up at the air and making her eyes turn white. She does this weird like spinning tornado thing where she's like spinning around hitting people.
Which it looks so dumb.
Horrible. It's terrible.
But I do want to say that the fact that she full on flies multiple times throughout the movie, it made me happy. I was glad that, I guess because so many of the other actors were out of the way, at least Storm had a lot of opportunities to manifest her powers and do it in an impressive way, which is something that was severely lacking with shit like her levitating in an elevator passage and shit like that. Storm was just so fucking sad in the first 3 movies. I was happy that they gave her some opportunities to demonstrate her powers, but especially the flights, that's such a liberating ability. And there's actually deleted scenes where she got to do even more stuff. A lot of it was goofy as shit, like electrocuting Juggernaut through Wolverine's claws. But I was glad that at least Storm got to do some shit in terms of using her powers, even though, you know, again, the performance and the actual meatiness of the role itself and the dialogue coming out of her face was not anything that anybody gave a shit about for the most part.
I thought that the Jean Grey, where she's like floating the whole house up in the air and she starts to disintegrate Professor X, I thought for 2006, that looked pretty good.
Well, and again, you're really shocked.
That looked way
you're really shocked when she kills Xavier. It's like, it really becomes real. You know, Cyclops, you're like, that didn't really happen. But when you actually see Xavier get blown to pieces, you're like, holy shit, we're going here. They're going to these places. And you really does send a shock to the system. I remember that in the theater being like, wow, they're going here. I just did not expect that.
Yeah. And like Magneto is straight up like terrified. Like even he's like, holy shit, like this is fucking out of control. But you also have to understand while we talk about these cool parts, she has nothing to do with this fucking movie. And she is not the main plot of the movie. The main plot of the movie is this mutant cure. So please keep that, folks, in the back of your mind when you're listening to this. This sounds like some cool stuff we're talking about. Like Professor X fucking up her mind with mind blocks and her levitating houses and killing people. This is not the plot of the movie. The plot of the movie is a mutant cure. Professor X immediately gets a funeral. Scott is not mentioned still. And that's when I started putting hashtag fuck Slim in my notes because throughout this movie, it's just hashtag fuck Slim.
Worth noting, when they give Xavier a gravestone, they have like a carving, it's an embossed like brass plate of Xavier's profile and stuff. It's a relief. And then when you got the other 2 people that they bury into the movie, spoilers, they just get the plain old acting, the basic version of it. So it's like, okay, well, I guess relative love levels are being demonstrated through gravestones. That's a really weird sort of shade.
Okay, so then that's where it's like this movie is rushing so fast, but let's let the Kitty, Bobby, Rogue love triangle breathe a little bit, where she's staring at them. And now Rogue's only in it for like 5 seconds, but you know, he's freezing the lake and they're going to go ice skating on the lake. And I'm like, this is more love triangle development than we ever took with Cyclops, Jean, and Wolverine. And it is far less compelling and does not matter a shit to any of these movies. So that was frustrating. Beast was in this movie and I thought he looked really, really good until he put on the Beast uniform and he's in like the leather jacket and that looked freaking absolutely ridiculous.
Well, but I mean, they have a moment.
The minute he spoke, you were like, that's Frazier.
Well, Frazier is Hank McCoy, though. Hey, Frazier is perfect for Hank McCoy, you know? A hyper-verbose, intellectual. He was perfect casting.
But there's the scene, and this is what I talk about. This scene, the fucking movie moves way too fast. Where Beast is in there and they're talking about after Professor X is dead. After he'd already told Aurora that she could take over, you know, at some point when he passed away. And Beast is like, well, there is no more Professor X. There's no more, school for the gifted youngsters. And then like, what do you call it? Fucking Angel just walks in and then Beast is like, the school's fucking back open. Like it was in like a 45-second scene. Beast is ready to shut the school school down, and then he's immediately let's open it back up. It's
well, I think that was Storm actually that said that we need to open it back up.
Okay, it might have been Storm, but it was just like we're shutting it down. Everybody's sad. We're shutting it down. But Angel's here. We're changing our minds. Angel's here. Let's open it back.
Shows up because isn't the school for the safety of mutants? Yeah. And they kind of look at each other. And she's like, yes, it is. The school's open again.
It's open. I think Pyro's got a wig on in this movie. That annoyed me. Hugh Jackman is roided beyond belief. And good lord. Like I said, I was watching these movies in succession. It is just outrageous. The dude's body has been morphed by this movie. Let me see. What else? Magneto picking up Golden Gate Bridge sucked. Beast in his X-Men costume is terrible. Storm electrocutes that one like random mutant, and after she electrocutes her and kills her, her lip stud is like glowing and sizzling. Yeah, and I was just like, give me a fucking.
I like that. Actually,
what bothered me was whenever they brought the bridge over to attack, and he commences the attack, and Magneto tells Juggernaut to stop, and they're running. He goes, "You always send the pawns first." And I'm like, so these aren't his people anymore. He's like sending them to their death. Like he kind of took a turn where he was trying to defend all mutants, and now kind of have cannon fodder for mutants. Like and he even says this is why we send them first because they're all getting cured. And I was thinking, man, that's a really fucking weird turn for Magneto to be from. One minute I'm trying to save my species to, well, some of them are expendable.
Well, it's because they introduced the class of mutant in this one. Like she's a class 5, you're a class 4, to where it's like literally he doesn't care about class 1 mutants. They can be disposed of. He's wanting to preserve the higher class mutants, and that's not really the turn Magneto seemed to be going for in the first 2 movies.
I mean, am I wrong? Where the first ones he seemed like he wanted to save them all, and now he's kind of like, well, only if you're above a certain class now you're valuable in his eyes.
But he does have the great line after Mystique gets turned back into just like a regular human, and he walks away and he's like, it's a pity she was so beautiful, or something like she was a beautiful creature or something like that. Like now she's this disgusting human. I thought that was a pretty good, even though she's like super hot, and now Rebecca Romaine, who's just like disgusted by her. That is a little more Magneto, where it's like Professor X wants everybody to live together. Magneto wants to exterminate he wants to purge the planet of humans and keep let the mutants rule because they're the evolved version of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why X-Men fans hate this movie so much is because Magneto is supposed to be something of an anti-hero. He's got a following all of his own, and they build that up in the first 2 movies. They've always wanted to harp on the whole, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X thing, and where there's a class of people that definitely would demonize Malcolm X, and certainly that same class of people are much less quick to bring up his name when they're bringing up King's name, but you still recognize these are both civil rights leaders that both affected positive change for black people in this country. And so when you completely demonize the Malcolm X analog and have him become such a broad, cartoonish bigot like the kind that he's supposed to be fighting, I can see that where fans would be repulsed by that interpretation of the character. And while I definitely, at the time I saw the movie, I really appreciated the gut punch of them abandoning Raven after she sacrifices her mutant abilities to save Magneto. Like she has no value now that she's longer a mutant. That was a real gut punch. At the time I saw the movie, I was like, man, I'm really impressed they went there. But at the same time, I recognized that that's a complete bastardization of the character of Magneto, and that while he definitely has strong prejudice against the humans, and with good reason based on how he's been treated throughout his life, he doesn't necessarily see humans as being something completely inferior. He just sees them as a threat. Going to the point where he sees his own kind as being, dispensable. That's not who the character of Magneto is supposed to be. It's just descending into cartoon action for the final movie among people who maybe don't really understand the character. So, yeah.
Well, X2, he was about to get Professor X to exterminate the human race. But,
right.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay,
but for him to abandon Mystique, though,
I gotta log off soon. Okay. So let me get my last couple things here. Okay, Jean Grey killing all those people was the snap special effect where they turned into ash and were like floating away. I thought that was hilarious. Let me see. Was that it? And I just want to say I didn't hate this movie as much as I hated it the first time I saw it, because for some reason I thought this was a totally different movie. And now I'm wondering if I actually did see some other X-Men movie and some of the scenes from one of those movies I was putting into this movie, because it did not end the way I remembered it. Like I remember Juggernaut, I remember all that stuff, though I'm the Juggernaut bitch stuff and all that crap. But there was something with this movie that I just did not remember. I still did not like this movie, and it was a mess. But I don't know what it was. There is some missing scene in my brain my brain has made that was in this movie that is not there, of Jean Grey either killing everybody or something. So I'm wondering if I caught some other movie and supplanted one of those scenes into this film. But which was just that's sort of a weird personal thing to me, that like there was this scene that I remembered absolutely hating, and it's not in this movie in a way that
I think I'm with you on that. For some reason, I remember there being a scene where they referred to Jesus being a mutant.
Oh, I'm not sure about it.
That does actually sound familiar to me. You know, there is a line about Albert Einstein where Albert Einstein wasn't a mutant that we know of, and there might have done something like that in one of the other movies too. That seems vaguely familiar to me.
Okay.
Unless there was some Grant Morrison shit you're just transposing.
I remember hearing that and I was thinking, where's that line? Because I remember hearing that line. You're right. Maybe it was one of the other ones. Because watching them all like this, you start kind of blend them in together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any more questions for me, sir? Because I got to get out of here.
I was going to offer a comment right quick, but if you got to go, you got to go. I'll just finish up with Fix.
No. I'll offer your comment quick.
Well, I don't have a quick comment, so that if you got to go ahead and go.
Oh, shit. Now you're teasing it, and I want to hear it.
Okay. Well, just a quick rundown with the characters. It's interesting that you've got Dr. Maura McTaggart in several movies before she becomes a really major character, starting with the First Class. I think it's interesting that it's easy to miss her. Jubilee is in all three of these movies. Did y'all guys catch her at any point in the course of those movies?
Yeah, she's one of those students.
There's even refer to her by name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a deleted scene in the second movie where she's reading about the presentation on mutation at the museum, and she's getting so pissed off at how the mutants are being characterized that she starts to crackle with her energy powers. So she's been in at least four, if not five, of the X-Men movies, and yet she's never been anything, really noteworthy. Got to keep in mind that not only do we get the Stan Lee cameo in this movie, but we also get Chris Claremont, so that was a nice little shout out, even though I'm sure this is the last of the movies he'd want to actually appear in. There were a lot of cameos, though, that kind of take you out of the movie. I think it's really cool they got the guy from Silence of the Lambs in the movie, but I'm thinking about that the entire time rather than his interactions with Mystique. Same goes when Arlie Ermey suddenly has a voiceover portion at the Alcatraz where...
I did catch that.
Yeah. Well, of course you would, man. Full Metal Jacket.
Put down your metal, pick up your plastic guns. Yeah, I remember that scene.
It's weird that you've got Ken Long in this movie as Porcupine Man, and he's going to later go on to be Karnak in Inhumans. Just a weird little parallel there that he managed to come back again. Apparently, the lady who keeps disappearing into her own shadow, which is very much a Nightshade power from DC, she's actually supposed to be playing Psylocke. She's credited as Psylocke in the movie. Not something you would have necessarily expected. Yeah. So another one. Cool. They got Arclight from Marauders in the movie. I think, were you familiar with that? Fixit from the comic book?
No.
Does that didn't mean anything to you? Okay.
No.
What do you guys think about Angel?
Terrible. He's so weird in this movie. I don't know. I like the scene as him as a kid, and I get that it motivating his father to want to demutate him, and he was all like, no, I want to be, I changed his mind. I liked all that. I thought the actor was like, I don't know. Something about that dude threw me off.
I'm an Archangel fan, so I'm not a big Angel fan.
So didn't do much for you. What about Multiple Man?
Yeah. That was kind of cool, but I
like how he fooled the GPS or whatever.
That was nice. I like when they're like, oh, he robbed 7 banks at the same time, and you see 7 of them pop up. But I don't know. To me, Multiple Man, every time he appears, all his personalities are different. Like, all his copies are different. They're not the exact. They have different personalities. They're supposed to be different aspects of them. So, but that's just a nitpick.
He's a pretty minor character.
Go ahead. I know you're going to bring up Juggernaut.
We'll get there. It's weird that Bill Duke is cast in this movie as Trask, and then several movies later, suddenly it's Peter Dinklage. I can't imagine going from, without a gender flip, I can't imagine them going with 2 more different actors to supposedly play the same character. You got Danai Ramirez as Callisto. She's too pretty. It's such a defining characteristic of Callisto that she's even by name, her being drawn from Greek mythology, she's supposed to be kind of a hag, she's supposed to be rough. And the whole super speed thing, I just don't understand why they went that way with Callisto. Let's see. I do like they got a lot more usage out of Colossus. I figured you would appreciate that as well.
Yes.
Vinnie Jones as Juggernaut. I come on, mate. You're the Juggernaut guy.
Bitch.
Yeah, come at us. How do you feel about that?
No comment. I don't know. Dude, it was stupid. That's not the Juggernaut.
What? Yeah, he was just kind of dumb.
Was he?
Yeah, his helmet looked like a dick.
It did. No, Kitty literally calls him a dickhead at one point. It's true.
Yeah, I was like, his helmet looks like a dick. The whole thing about Juggernaut's like, once he starts, you can't stop him. Yeah, but he's more like a powerhouse. He just starts punching and kicking and whatever. He's a muscle. And this one is like, oh, he can't move at all. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of lame, but I get it.
What was it a suit or was it CGI? What the fuck did they have Vinnie Jones in? It's got to be a suit, right?
It was weird.
It was
so rubber.
To give him the abs and stuff, to give him the size.
No, everything. There's no way those were his arms. Those were so rubbery arms. And I couldn't figure out I assume it was practical. I assume it's a suit, but it just looks so fucking ridiculous. It's like, could somebody in real life have made a suit that looked that bad?
There's a ludicrous video where he has giant Popeye's arms and he punches shit. And I immediately thought of that when I saw that suit. When I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a giant Popeye suit. I get it now.
But setting aside how bad he looked, do you think that Vinnie Jones should have been playing Juggernaut in the first place? Do you hear Juggernaut when he starts speaking?
Honestly, no one has really. They did a TG one of him in fucking Deadpool. I mean, it's Charles Xavier's stepbrother. You can pretty much put any actor in there. And so, I don't know. I mean, I didn't particularly care. He didn't ruin the character or anything. It's fucking Juggernaut.
Lots of indifference. Lots of indifference in this movie. Lots of indifference in this movie. Yeah. We're just like, how was he? He was there. You know, it was all right.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this movie was a fucking dumpster fire.
Well, for me, you know, another character that's in every one of these three movies is Kitty Pryde. But of course, she's just a minor cameo here and there in the first two movies. In this movie, she takes center stage. For me, as somebody who thought that Kitty Pryde should have been in these movies from the very beginning, I really enjoyed having an actress of Ellen Page's caliber playing that character. I think it was smart they managed to get somebody who is, you know, of shorter stature, so you got the sense of her youth, and she helped to de-age some of the other characters around her just by being so much shorter than them. And because Kitty Pryde is my favorite of the X-Men, I just was really excited for her being in the movie as much as she is. Not a lot. I'm not a huge fan of her getting hooked up with Iceman, but I was glad to have her in the movie. When I saw this movie back in 2006, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a blast with it. I enjoyed the Schadenfreude. I enjoyed the fact that I knew that tons of X-Men fans were going to hate how they treated their characters. And I thought revisiting it today that would be diminished because I just don't have the same anger in my heart toward the X-Men that I had back then. But I still thoroughly fucking enjoy this movie for the shit show that it is. I don't hate it nearly as much as anybody else on earth, it seems like. I actually have a blast watching this movie. I think that there's just so much weird shit going on that I'm entertained throughout it. I enjoy it more than the first X-Men easily. At no point did I feel any desire to go to sleep during this movie. And while I recognize the logic lapse and the cartoonish excesses and all the reasons why people would be pissed off this movie for how the characters are treated, I still thoroughly enjoy it. And my favorite X-Man's in this one. So this is the only one that she's in a prominent role. I'm always happy to watch this. I don't even own this one. I don't know about you guys, but I struggled because the first one I could stream. The second one I had to bring out my 2 DVD set, and I actually had the Blu-ray of the first one, so I watched the special features there. X3 is the only one that I had a bad burn on, that I had to go digging through my boxes to try to find this burn. And watching it again, it's like, why didn't I ever buy this one? Maybe I didn't get a good deal on it, but I would actually watch X3 again. I just enjoy how crazy and goofy it is. For me, it's below X-Men United because obviously it's just not as good of a movie in any respect, but because it's so fucking fun, I really don't mind it. So it's somewhere in that weird space that like Age of Ultron inhabit, where there's stuff I like and stuff I don't necessarily care for, but it makes me way less mad than Age of Ultron. So it's somewhere in that realm, but I'm actually a fan of the movie, and I continue to be a fan of the movie.
I mean, I can see that. I can see that. I can see where you could just be like, it's such a kind of a mess, and there's always stuff going on. Except it is like the longest of the three movies.
Oh yeah, the 250 is hard to get through this one because not just in the time frame, because I put a deadline, and I should have watched the movie sooner than I had. We were all kind of pushing that deadline to try to do this recording on Saturday. That was the only thing I didn't appreciate. It was long, but I didn't mind it. I still enjoyed it even for the length.
And I just can't get over how wasted Jean Grey was in this movie. Like, it's just that whole, she just stands around.
Oh yeah.
Like, she's obviously was set up in the last movie to be the main point of this movie. Mm-hmm. And if you were going to do it, didn't work, but just leave her dead. Like, what? Like, did you even need to bring her back? Like, it was so wasted. I can't get over it. I can't get over it. I can't get over how they tossed Cyclops out. I can't, just some of these things that I'm watching the whole movie. I can't get over how shitty Magneto is in this movie to everybody. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I can't do it. I can't get over it.
And if you watch the deleted scenes, it only gets worse. He's even a bigger asshole in there. And it's such a chore getting through a lot of the deleted scenes. They definitely, the shit they cut, they need to cut for sure.
Face front, true believers. Stan Lee presents Diabolu Frank.
Yet another extra long episode, so we're going to cut the enough sayers. Sorry. Going to make a point of getting you guys in there next time. Probably have to come up with designated material just for that. So permanent Marvelite Maximus followers include Adam Clark, Adam M. Awoana, Andrew at No False Prophet, Bernie Jackson, Brian Dockery, Casey Lau, CJ, Comic Book Collectors Overlord, Construct Comics Pod, Dean Robert Willits, Drew at 9Boxer 9, Alyssa McClousland, Elnaz Akbari, Eric Stull, Erico Thorolt, Gamer Guy Icon, Graham Neal Reed, Dr. Jennifer Schwartz-Levine, Paul Galassi Art, Helmuth Brickisack, John from Married with Comics, Jorge Huergi, Juliet Calypso Texas, Carl Ottersberg, Luan Scarlatti, or Luan, Mahomes Maestro, Nathaniel Devon Sanford, New Horizon Marketing, Otto M, Parallax Studio, Ryland Grant, The Subhumanite, Thai Soul Catering, Thick Bachwinkle, aka Peter Melnick, W4142 at The Max Fish, We Riding Lassie, Waymont Private Limited, and Zwit Jameson. Fearless Facebook front-facers include Keith G. Baker, Yvonne Charoux, Derek William Crabb, Ryan Daly, Debache, and Roger Preeb. Retweet frantic ones include Dr. Ange, Between the Pages, Spider Gina, Odell Abner Dracula, and Talk Nerdy to Me. Keepers of the Favorites Flame include Professor Alan Middleton, Chris Dunford, Chris Lydon, Constantine Kotsirus, Demi, Doc Strange, Forever and a Gay, FTO Nerd Talk / Black Lives Matter, GK Wordsmith, Glassdoll Glass, Harmless Entertainment, # Black Lives Matter, Helmuth Brickasat, Jacket Spidey Memoir, Jennifer DeRoss, Jim Bruglia, Yogos Clásicos y Antiguos, Juglart in Simian, Keith G. Baker, King Dinosaur, Law Dog Loves RPGs New and Old, The List Game, Marvel Universe Online, Mike It Send Aliens to Me, who added, that is a slick poster, I like that, regarding the Mondo Iron Man 2 poster in print, Ricky Bell Jr., Ryan Burke, Ryan Daly, The Curse of Capistrano, Schloctopus Inc., Slangward Scott, Tony Scipione, Tora at Dendrococcalia, Japan, Tuck, Warlord Worlds, and When Lightning Strikes.
The Merry Marching Society of the Marvel Superhero Podcast.
The 108th Sage, Billy at Excelsior 73, Canoes, Dario Oliveira, Dirk Ashton, Firestorm Fan, The Hammer Strikes, Random Geeky Stuff, History of Comics on Film, Iowa's Joe Crawford, Jason Snikt Venable, Jeffrey Brown, Jeremy J. Joseph, JMT Productions, Kappa Pride Hulk, Kaylee J, King Size Comics, Giant Size Fun Podcast, Paul Matthew Carr, Randy Caldwell, Resurrections and Adam Warlock and Thanos Podcast, Richard Field, Richard G, who added Thanks for the Addition, more to listen to soon, Secret Wars Beyond Podcast, The Silver Cord, Thunderbolt Media, Tim Price Podcrasher, Trans Lesbian Planet Eater, and X32 Diana.
The Marvel Superheroes Podcast is in no way affiliated or endorsed by Marvel Entertainment. All characters mentioned and audio clips employed are believed covered under fair use, but remain copyright their respective copyright holders. But of course the views expressed are wholly owned by the people who spoke them. No infringement is intended.
Base runs! Lift your head! You're on the winning team! You belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, and your score is nearly zero, do not howl, do not moan, you can be a superhero marching right along to the fighting song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, grow forever greater. We can show you how